For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Are you spending a lot of time looking for setups and struggling for faster lap times? Are you tired of searching online for answers? Would you like to get setups, analysis and tutorials from some of the best sim racers in the world like Ralph Alla, Mitchell de Jong, Martin Krunker, Josh Rogers and many more? If so, virtualracingschool.com is the answer you've been looking for. VRS data packs provide hot laps from our professional coaches for you to analyse and replicate. They provide tutorials that walk you through the fastest laps and what the pros did to achieve the best times. And they provide the setups you need to ensure your car is competitive in both oval and road racing. If you're ready to get faster and reach more podiums sooner than later, just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a free account today.
Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round and another week of racing in what is the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship Season 8 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing. And once again we're here with Split B for what is expected to be an absolutely hotly contested round of racing action. But after a fantastic season opener at the Watkins Glen International Circuit only a week ago, we have made our way from the United States of America to Europe, and in particular to Portugal for the Portimão Circuit, also known in full as the Algarve International Circuit, also known as the Autodromo Internacional do Algarve. But regardless of how you name it, it is a circuit that is young with regards to its history. Only opened 16 years ago to racing action, where it is a circuit that has played host to many a major international racing series since its inception, whether it be Formula 1, World Endurance Championship or otherwise, you name it, it's raced here. But why exactly has it raced here, I hear you ask? Well, it's raced here for the simple reason it may be a young circuit, but it's got the ultimate old school vibe and feel about it, in the fact that it has 15 corners with a huge array of elevation changes intermingled into its asphalt, where our drivers will find themselves going from rises to falls and from falls to rises as quickly as they can approach each and every corner. And well, let's not forget about corner variety as well, as you do have 15 corners that are packed in with regards to sweepers, hairpins, chicanes. It's all there, and it means it all adds together, plus its extended straights, particularly at the start finish line, to create a circuit where overtaking opportunities are in abundance, and it's not an easy circuit to get right, and that's what makes it entertaining for drivers and spectators alike. Where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this live broadcast of Circuit Side, available only on YouTube at youtube.com, and search for where's Evolution Sim Racing or ESR, and you'll only find it on the official Evolution Sim Racing YouTube channel. And welcome to you guys and girls tuning in today. And well, don't be shy, feel free to say hi, for the simple reason we don't bite here at what is Evolution Sim Racing. The only biting we do is that of our drivers, and they'll be biting on their brakes when they charge their way into each and every braking zone. But as we bring you all the racing action from what is a rather wet and rainy Portimão Circuit right now, when the content booth you have myself, Paul TX11 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all your racing action from Split B over the entirety of the season. And of course, in parallel, we do have the Split A broadcast ongoing, and that's in the very capable hands, I do believe this evening, of Chaz Draycott and Joe Glass, unless I'm mistaken. Darren Thacker also being one of the commentators of Split A, and I believe Darren not quite available today, but you can catch all the racing there in what is the two top classes with Split A. But of course, we're here in Split B for what is the Premier and Evo classes. They may not be at the top, or the creme of the creme. I'll tell you one thing, we've seen the creme of the creme in terms of racing at Watkins Glen, and we're going to give you a recap of what's happened so far and what is lying in wait going into today. But coming into today then, well, let's talk a little bit about what is the season so far. In the fact, we've already made our way then to round number 2. We opened up on our 2x30-minute sprint race round format, and the Watkins Glen International's boot course, it was a very intriguing story in the fact that nobody really demonstrated themselves at what was a favourite in the opening round. Albeit you could say perhaps in what was the Evo class, we did get to see Wesley Van Rens absolutely deliver with back-to-back victories. There was a bit of a story there and a big caveat which we'll come on to in due course. And meanwhile, in what was the Premier class, it was completely wide open after what was an incredibly close close qualifying session between the likes of what was Peter Duke, who ended up P2 on the grid, and Gordon Hales, who took pole position literally by 1,000th. But in the races, well, Gordon Hales may have absolutely run away to victory at the Watkins Glen circuit in race number 1. But in race number 2 of the Premier class, well, it was Jon Ludbrook's defensive drive that enabled him to take victory over Pete Paiva by the smallest of margins. But of course, things turn, and from the sunshine of the US of A and in the state of New York, we're here today in what is the Algarve region of Portugal for what is a rainy race, and we could be expecting some sunshine later on for our opening feature race of the season. And of course, this being at round 2 of 10, there's plenty of rounds to go, because after today we make our way to Italy for the Mugello circuit. The Grand Prix layout plays host, and some brilliant sunshine expected on the 17th of April. Then in round number 4, we make our way to Road America, back to the US for the state of Wisconsin, and a tour through the local countryside for what will be on the 24th of April, Road America, for our feature race round. And then we get to the end of the first half of the season with the circuit of the Americas Grand Prix circuit, playing host for round number 5 on the 1st of May. However, it's not going to be May Day and take a break. If anything, we're going to be roaring our way straight into the second half of the season, and it will be on the 8th of May that we'll go to Road Atlanta, the roller coaster ride of road racing in the US of A, and that will be playing host to all the drivers there in the US state of Georgia, after which we're making our way back to the European continent for the Le Mans circuit, or the circuit that's 24 hours Le Mans, and that will be on the 15th of May, and a very rainy day there expected in what will be a 2x30-minute race round. And then it will be our final feature race round of the season, round number 8 of the Sebring International Raceway circuit in what will be the US state of Florida in round number 8. And in the penultimate round, round number 9, we make our way back to Italy, and that's where we stay for the rest of the season. Starting off with the Autodromo International Enzo Edino Ferrari, the Imola circuit as it's known in short, and then we bring everything to a close and the curtain down on the 5th of June with round number 10 of 10 at the Autodromo Nacional Monza, or you will know and love it and refer to it as the Italian temple of speed that is Monza, and that'll be our season finale in the 2x30 sprint race format. But with that in mind, and of course plenty of racing to come, we come onto our circuit for today, and where's the Portimão Grand Prix circuit, located near the city from which it takes its name in the Faro district of the Algarve region of Portugal. Well, as we said earlier, this is one of the youngest circuits that we'll see on our calendar, but whilst it may be a young circuit, let's not underestimate its potency. Spanning the best part of 2.85 miles or 4.59 kilometres, depending on your preference of units, with a circuit whose length is absolutely outweighed by its brilliance in terms of how it weaves and winds all of its corners together. And there you can see on the circuit map and the fact that it all opens up with an extended long charge down towards turn number 1, and I say down because it's a big depression coming out of the pit lane, or indeed past the pit lane into Primera at turn number 1, and then it's the triple right sequence that concludes with a hairpin at Lagos at turn number 3, but it's a raw uphill into turn 4, and then downhill in towards the hairpin at turn number 5. Out of there, it's a runner, an absolute assault on the senses, as our drivers will make their way over the crest at turn number 6, down into the braking zones of turn 7 and 8, and out of Samson corner, they'll charge uphill over the crest and down through 9 and up the hill into Portimão corner at turns 10 and 11. Well, they come out of the double right and then through the depression at turn number 12 and up the hill into the hairpin at turn number 13, but switching back into another hairpin at Sagra's corner at turn number 14, and that'll see our drivers wind their way out through Galp corner at turn number 15 to complete the lap where we flat out on corner exit and go on to the next one. And when wet conditions, it's definitely going to be a lot of throttle balancing, but when we do go to the dry, well, we could definitely see some flat out racing coming through Galp onto that start-finish straight. But as we get set and ready to go, and really a two-dimensional image doesn't explain how powerful this circuit is, and we're going to get some board laps, I think, in practice and qualifying, with practice being underway currently today. We're not going to be taking you through the championship standings because of the fact those are not available at the moment. We will be bringing those after today, going into round number 3. But what we can do instead is start to look at some of our drivers out there right now, trying to get their best possible laps in. And as we mentioned earlier, and as you can see on your screens, it is a very wet circuit today here at the Portimão Circuit. At least the rain has been falling in the build-up to practice, and indeed it has just stopped falling, I believe, in what is this practice session. I can't see any rain falling there, at least not over the start-finish straight, as we see Jan Osberg making his way on down pit lane. I mean, the fastest driver overall and in the Premier class in what is this practice session, albeit the fastest driver by 2 tenths over Peter Duke. Meanwhile, here you see Duke in the Honda NSX, or the Acura NSX, let's get it right then in terms of branding. The American company, or the American arm of Honda, if you will, the Acura NSX Evo 22 machine, and as he makes his way on down there, Duke was one of the faster drivers at Watkins Glen. He was fast in the preseason at the Red Bull Ring, but he definitely wasn't the man to absolutely deliver all the points into his basket, and therefore he'll know that today it's a different style of race, and therefore he's going to have to be one step ahead of the competition if he wants to try and run away victorious. But as we say hello there to Pradescu Dennis, who I believe will be cheering on a number of drivers, particularly some of our Verano Academy drivers that you'll see in the Evo class. We'll be taking a look at 2 of our Premier class drivers, but who's the fastest, I hear you ask, in the Evo class? Well, here is Gareth Newton, who right now is looking quite fast out there, it must be said, and we're currently in what is P8 overall, but leader of the Evo drives provisionally over Bertinket, and the gap between the two of them being only what is 1.5 tenths there, and that will feel like an eternity, albeit in wet weather conditions. It's not an eternity, it's microscopic, because those lap times will continue to evolve, and once you can see a lot of spray come off the back of that Porsche 902 GT3 car right now, with no rain falling, you can imagine the circuit will gradually dry up. We're expecting a wet qualifying session, but when we do go into the race, there will be the big question mark. Do you start on the dries? Do you start on the wet? And when will you, if you start on the wet tyre, do you transition to the dry, given the fact we are expecting sunshine to fall over the circuit? But as soon as I say that, there's some more rain falling, it would seem, coming out of turn 3 into turn number 4. So we've got some isolated patches of rain. The clouds haven't completely walked away off of the circuit yet, and that makes things unpredictable, and therefore it does mean that you can't truly rely on the weather forecast. You're going to have to do things locally, and that will be a big change for our drivers, and we will see that over the course of the season. There'll be some rounds where there's the expectation of mixed conditions. Some of the conditions will be static with sunshine and cloud, and others where we'll see static rain, such as at Le Mans. But here today, it could be anything goes with conditions, and most certainly it does so, and that means it's only going to add to the variety. But as we do see what is our driver making his way down through turn number 7 in towards 8, well, one of the drivers who absolutely delivered in qualifying at Watkins Glen in the Evo class, he leaves the pit lane. Perfect time in there. The Verano Academy driver of Adil Chowdhury, who we had the pleasure of catching up with in what was the post-round broadcast, and saying the fact he was very happy with the qualifying session. The races didn't quite go his way, and really a mirror of his pre-season performances at the Red Bull Ring. The fact absolutely delivered in qualifying. When it came to the races, bad luck in race number 1 at the Red Bull Ring, and race number 2 was all about the recovery drive. And well, we saw that again at Watkins Glen, getting caught up in one of the major incidents on lap number 1 of race number 1 of the day at Watkins Glen. But in race number 2, it was all about just trying to charge through the field as quickly as he possibly could, and doing exactly that. And will in the end bring on the results home as best he knew how. But as Chowdhury makes his way through turn number 4 and down towards 5, will creeping his way on down there. We do look for Chowdhury, who we expect, I think right now, just trying to get himself acclimatised to conditions, because he's completely off the pace compared to his rivals at the moment, down in P16 in the Evo and P46 overall. And something tells me he's just getting himself dialed in here on this outlap, and he's still got 3 minutes to go, and therefore just started to build up some momentum. That's always important. But also we do need to look to the likes of Mark Parkhurst, who wasn't quite a player as such in the big events that occurred at Watkins Glen. I think the open lap incident at race number 1 really shook up the Evo class more than what was the Premier class, in the fact we did see the top 10, which was made up of what was primarily Premier drivers. They mostly made it through unscathed, and then the rest of the field had to pick its way through the scene of the carnage. And when that happens, or indeed when it happened then, it does mean that you get this huge shake-up in the field. It's normally the drivers who started right towards the back. If they're able to make their way through, they normally pick up not just 10, but sometimes up to 20 places, and that's where they suddenly score a big result, because they're simply the ones who don't get caught up in all the carnage around them. And well, today it could be a similar story, albeit we're not expecting major carnage. Indeed, unfortunate incidents at Watkins Glen, but the stewards were hard at work and dished out many a penalty, and also some no further action notices. And well, thank you to our stewards at Evolution Sim Racing for all their hard work that goes on behind the scenes to make things flow as smoothly as they can be. But as we do see Mark Parkhurst make his way through here today, sometimes it might be the case that you're not on the pace compared to the fastest drivers out there, but do you really need to be if you can just be consistent in these wet conditions and also have an ace up your sleeve in the drying conditions? And that might be what you need in order to roar your way to the top of the standings. But as our drivers are coming towards the end of practice right now, with Dean Sheesby, meanwhile, we do look to the NSX Evo at 22 driver, the Acura driver, making his way there through turns 10 and 11, and as he does so, goes a little bit deep there through turn number 11 at Portimão corner. The double right, we use turn 10 to set up turn 11, and therefore I think right now Sheesby just finding, like many, there's still some grip levels out there to be ascertained, and that's going to make it very difficult on the day. But as we do look to your oval standings on the left hand side of your screen, you see all 42 drivers with registered times right now, albeit we do have what is the best part. In fact, I think we're seeing all 42 drivers there that our time towel will permit us to see, so I should correct myself there. We do have 48 drivers in attendance today, and well, it does look as though Sheesby being in P12 at the moment. The highest placed what is Evo driver in terms of the silver stripe drivers is Newton, staying in P7 at the moment, which is very impressive in this practice session. But it is Peter Duke who has just tipped the standings in his favour at the very top there in the Premier class and overall, ahead of Jan Östberg, the Swedish driver who was on top for quite some time going into this practice session, and through it, well, he's now 3.5 tenths down. But then again, we don't know the fuel levels our drivers are running, and also we don't know whether those grip conditions are changing. We suspect they are, and could they be changing favourably? And if so, it may be that Usberg has not been able to respond, much like Duke has, and therefore Duke has been able to find the time that Usberg will potentially find when we do go into that qualifying session that's only 30 seconds away. But whilst we are waiting to go into that qualifying session, well, do let us know who you're cheering on today. Don't be shy, as I said earlier, feel free to say hi here, and if you're not subscribed to the Evolution Sim Racing channel already, be sure to do so, and that way you can stay up to date with all of our weekly broadcasts. We've got plenty coming over the course of the 2025 championship campaigns or the seasonal campaigns, and well, there's plenty to look forward to here. It's the hottest place to be in the iRacing and Sim Racing world right now. But Sheetsby makes his way on through. We look back to those class positions one more time there, and there you can see the confirmation with regards to how our classes tries to line up in this practice session. But of course, practice is one part of the story, but it's not doing things in anger compared to what is qualifying, and when our drivers are going to be put to the test, ladies and gentlemen, as it is time for that qualifying session for round number 2 of the championship. And as qualifying gets underway, then it is go, go, go for the best part of what will be 15 minutes of qualifying. But remember, it is 4 flying laps here in this qualifying session. So they get the out lap, of course, which we're seeing Jon Ludbrook, one of many on these close qualifying sessions, doing right now. But after that out lap, they then have 4 flying laps with which to try and set their best possible time. The rain is still falling currently as well, but looking at the intensity on the cameras, it's sporadic rain and also it's lighter rain. Although, as soon as I say that, the camera transitions to the exit of turn 3 in towards turn number 4, and it makes me feel like a little bit of a liar here. But I do promise you, looking at my content booth window, that compared to the rain we had earlier, we still got umbrellas up in those virtual grandstands. But the thing is now, it does look as though our spectators and our drivers being pelted with a little bit less of what is the liquidity. And as we do see what is Ludbrook going down in towards turn number 5, of course, the winner of race number 2 last time at Watkins Glen, well, it's going to be all in his mind here, which is, okay, I've now got to get the job done. But he roars his way on around here. We look to Steve Rubino in the Ford Mustang at GT3. And why are we expecting perhaps our Ford Mustang drivers to go quite strongly here? Well, the Mustang as a GT3 class car, front engine, rear wheel drive. Now, you might be thinking immediately, well, that doesn't bode too well in wet conditions. Normally, you want something like the Porsche. Engine over the back, rear engine, rear wheel drive. The engine is over the rear axle, and that gives you the best stability with regards to the rear of the car, so long as you can tame that rear end and not let it slide loose. And of course, that is why the downsides of mid-engine rear wheel drive and even rear engine rear wheel drive, and it extends to likes of the Ferrari 296, also the McLaren 720S Evo, just to name some of them, in the fact that when you do lose the rear, it becomes very spectacular. Now, conversely, the Ford has the engine over the front, and that means the car will naturally have that centre of weight, or that centre of mass, moved forward, but also the Ford in general is a much more stable car compared to some of its other front engine rear wheel drive peers. In fact, when you do look at the likes of the Mercedes AMG Evo, you do normally find that the weight transfer over the front is so significant that when the rear tyres light up, the car absolutely wants to kick the rear round. But with the Ford, whilst it does have that, it also does have a rather decent set of electronics to compensate, and also it does have a very heavy mass, as we do see there Rubino giving a demonstration of what happens when you take all that mass very heavily into turn number 13, and the car just rolls forward there. And well, this Ford Mustang is going to be one of those cars which will feel very safe in the wet conditions. It won't feel the fastest, but being safe is better than being sorry, and it may work out for Rubino and the likes of Grant Miller as well, one of our other Ford Mustang drivers in what is these Evo conditions, well, not Evo conditions, in these wet conditions for our Evo drivers, I should say, as he makes me stumble over my words there, as he dances his way through turns 7 and into 8, and now up the rise he goes. But as he does so, well, the first flying laps are now started to be set by some of our drivers, as we do say hello to Matt Hunter in the YouTube chat there, who says best of luck to the Simcast team at UK boys. And well, as those first flying laps get underway, Rubino being one of them, we also do look to what is the Mercedes AMG Evo driver here of Dale Williams. And well, the Premier driver right now had a disappointing day at Watkins Glen. Nothing quite went the way he wanted it to, it must be said. But at least today here he can reset the clock in the 60-minute feature race, and well, look to what will be an opportunity to have a happy day in the office. But you can see they're tiptoeing his way through turn number 5, and this Mercedes very strong in the dry. A very tricky car to get right in the wet. It's not impossible, to be fair, and we could expect our Mercedes drivers to do very well. We don't have too many Mercedes drivers here on the grid, or indeed in the entirety of what is Both splits for Season 8, but in Split B, we do have Dale Williams in what is the Premier Class, and we also have Liam Fraser in what is the Premier Class. So both of them there are risking it for the German mark, but otherwise in what is the Evo Class, we don't have anybody running the Mercedes, and that's because it is a car that in the lower gears, in low-speed corners, it absolutely lights up those rear tyres. It's got a lot of horsepower available from that V8 engine, 6.3 litres, naturally aspirated, but the problem with it is you've got to get that power down, and getting that power down is the tricky part. But as he tiptoes his way into turn 30, you can see a little bit of a wobble there, ran out into the exit curbing, just upsetting the balance of the car and under braking the car, wanting to snatch away on him, but snatch it back under his control, and now down into turn number 14. That rain picking up once more. Well, we thought the rain was going to go away, and it looks so. In fact, it has intensified a little bit here, so the weather going against what our forecast was, and in towards turn number 15. Through Galp Corner goes, and you can see that he's going intentionally very deep and wide into the corner to really let the car coming out and then turn on through, but not getting a tight apex because there's so much standing water there on the depression into 15. And as he heads towards the timeline, well, what's it going to be here for what is our Mercedes driver as he comes on through? And for Dale Williams, it will be, I do believe there, what is a 2:03.36, the nearest 100th, and well, still more time out. There's a 2-minute 0.5 for Peter Jew, and the Honda NSX is one of the favourites here to do very well in the wet because it has one of the strongest electronic systems, particularly its traction control system, which gives it a major edge compared to some of its rivals. And well, Duke demonstrating that prowess and also his own prowess, to be fair. It's not just the car carrying him, he's got to do it himself, and as he makes his way out of turn number 4 down towards 5, looking very much in control. But speaking of taking control of things, well, I think it's only time we take control of riding on board with other tries for a flying lap, and we're going to do so today with none other than what will be our driver here as we bring the dashboard up of James Pallett as he makes his way down towards turn number 1. So he makes his way in the long charge and down, heading into top gear and all the way downhill into the braking zone here. We'll brake quite early to settle the weight transfer of the car down to second gear at the apex of turn number 1, and now letting the car creep through back up to third gear to set the rear wheels down, and then through the right-hander at turn number 2 and onto the brakes here in towards turn number 3. Coming up through the right-hander, goes a little bit deep there, but catch the car in time. You can see the big puddle there as he comes out of 3 in towards 4. They're going to have to be careful of that, and over the rise he goes, but the car just gradually walks away through, and Pallett has to fight the steering wheel, but it comes loose, and into the barrier there goes James Pallett, and it's a nightmare moment as he toes the pit. But meanwhile, Rob McKee carries on, and well, with certainty we can carry on right on board another McLaren driver for the rest of the flying lap as he comes on down in towards turn number 5, breaking in the middle of the road there. Now you can't use the outside curbing because it's too slippery, and as he comes out in the first gear corner, now up the hill he goes in the McLaren, fighting at the steering wheel there versus the power delivered by the V8 bi-turbo engine, and through the left-hander at turn number 6 down into turn number 7 you'll go. Just a small decline initially, and now the elevation that gradually falls away again as he heads in towards 8 through Panasonic corner. Through the right-hander goes Samsung corner, in fact, we'll get it mixed up with Fuji as he comes on through there, fighting with the steering wheel, fighting with the power deployment. As you can see, literally sliding from left to right and back and forth with the DXT Motorsports driver. Through the left-hander he goes, up the rise through 9 in towards 10, completely unsighted. He's got a brake at 10 for 11, but you'll see he brakes nice and straight, lets the car roll deep, and then just turns it on through there, and that's how you approach 10 and 11. You're braking for 11 at 10, and now Cove through turn number 12 won't get too tight to the apex there because of how much water's puddling up, and McKee fighting with the steering every step of the way. It's more like he's driving a rally car right now as he comes on through turn number 13, through the left, and now into the right at turn number 14 he goes, and you'll see the circuit gradually declines away. It depresses downwards here and really winding the car on through now and having to balance out understeer even in a mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars. He almost goes completely sideways there, but McKee demonstrating some brilliant car controls. He now heads into Galp corner at turn number 15, over the rise and down into the dip and all the way through in 5th gear here. He'll gradually get to 6th gear eventually, but it'll take some time. But McKee, much like many of our drivers, absolutely showing how tricky these conditions are. He's currently down in P20 in the Premier Class, and overall that puts him P23. Does he improve this time? He moves up slightly to what is P19, but it's not a major improvement for McKee, and I think time is running out for a number of tries to try and find those improvements. As meanwhile, we look to Craig Tillerson, and well, the Corvette Z06 driver in his GT3 machine, the American machine right now, proving to be a bit of a challenge here. He is the best part of what is 25th in the Premier Class, and what is 33rd overall in terms of his relative lap time. 205.42 was his last lap and his best lap of this session versus what is Ricardo Luis Pereira's 159.459. Well, the time is out there. It's been demonstrated by the Acura drivers, and the Porsche is following, as you see in the top left corner of your screen, like time tower. But right now, Tillerson just not having a happy day in this Corvette. Not a very popular car at the moment in the GT3 class, at least in this championship. But I'll tell you one thing, it's one of those cars which is a bit of a middle ground compared to some of its peers, and many liken it as being like some sort of a middle ground between what is the Ferrari 296 and the Ford Mustang. You want that American V8, but you've also got the mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain and aerodynamic balance that's very akin to the Ferrari. And, well, as he makes his way on through the left-hander of turn number 10, up towards 11 he goes. In fact, going 12 into 13. Now, let's get my corner numbers right. Well, Tillotson right now just fighting at the steering wheel as, well, the superfans of Rano Esports and Vrado Academy, Kitty Eames there, who we say hello to the YouTube chat, tunes in and wishes all the best luck to the Vrado drivers. And happy to have you with us as always, Katie. And we also do say hello there to Lame Sheep Racing, who says, go LS Racing. And, well, I hope you're doing well, Lame Sheep Racing. That's a stumble over my words. I do have a habit of doing that as he makes his way on through turn number 15 and up towards turn number 1. But as he does so here, Tillotson heading towards that line. What's he going to do this time? Because qualifying times are still trickling in. We do have the best part of 6 minutes left and a number of drivers going on to what will be their final laps, if not their penultimate qualifying laps. And Tillotson does not improve there. Meanwhile, in what is the Evo class, Wesley Van Rens, well, he was a little bit of a background player in qualifying at Watkins Glen in the dry conditions, but the Ferrari driver right now is absolutely flying out there in the Evo class. He is 1.5 tenths faster than Gareth Newton, who laid down the pace marker in what was the practice session. But look at those overall times, and you'll see Van Rens is all the way up in P9 ahead of Newton, and right now Van Rens is looking very solidly inside this top 10 as he drifts his way on the brake now into turn number 5. You can see the car just sliding away under braking there, getting a bit aggressive. I think he feels as though the car's getting fast now as he's got some tyre temperature on this wet compound, but the problem is he makes his way on through in the fact you can get a little bit too bold, and you don't want to get bold with the wet tyre, and the fact that once it's in the ideal temperature window, you try to push it too hard and you end up taking away all that life in it because you just end up aquaplaning your way around the circuit. And, well, also you do put a lot of stress on the car, and that's not something you want, particularly to get a wet tyre boiling hot, so then you've got to cool it down. Thankfully, there's loads of water on the circuit that you can cool it down on, but in these qualifying laps, you don't want to spend time cooling down because that takes away your lap time. But as Van Rens makes his way on through, remember, two-time winner at Watkins Glen and therefore effective what is championship leader in the Evo class at this point in time after one round. Will he be leading after tonight? That's the big question. Well, makes his way in towards turn number 13. Absolutely smooth as they come there through the left-hander. This is more like it from Van Rens, and now down to 14, and this is showing where he's got that feeling in the car. He's got one more lap after this, so this might just be a sighting lap just to see how much life is out there in terms of pace, and if he can find it afterwards on what will be his final flying lap, that could be a very impressive end as Gareth Newton responds. He parks up there because he's out of laps, but he does take back what is the Evo provisional pole position as we show those class standings there by just shy of a 10th, and Van Rens crossed the line there on a lap that wasn't the best of laps, but still look at that, 59.899 puts him a whole second off of the overall pole sitter Ricardo Luis Pereira. But right now Van Rens is flying, but he flies a little bit too high there, coming out of 1 into 2, and that's going to be an invalidated lap, and he'll just use this final lap to cool down and get himself into the pit lane. But I think absolutely ecstatic that he may have taken what is his first pole position from qualifying this season, and Van Rens then the Ferrari absolutely delivering. But as we do look to the fastest man out there overall and in the Premier class right now of where's Luis Pereira, well, as he heads on through in the 137, that accurate looking dialed in. Peter Jukes in the pit lane, he's completed all his qualifying laps. Meanwhile, Luis Pereira still out there on a final lap. Well, the fastest lap being challenged meanwhile in the Evo class with Joe Nagy moving up, well, in fact Jan Nagy, I should say, moving up into what is P3 off camera, and well, closing up to 10K and also Van Rens. But as we do see there, Luis Pereira drifting his way through the final quarter. He's had the fastest middle sector of everybody as he heads towards the timeline. What's it going to be here for the 137 driver? Can he raise the bar even further? And the answer is yes, he does. It's a 58.828, and Luis Pereira absolutely delivering here. It's an absolutely golden time from the 137 driver, and I think nobody is going to have a response to it as we are running out of time in this qualifying session. Most of our drivers now coming through to their final laps, including Mark De Vries, who's about to come to line in the Ferrari 296. What could he do in the Italian 6-cylinder machine? Or as he comes to line, he's currently P20 in Premier, and in the end he will stay P20 in Premier, but he does improve to a 202.435, and that does move ahead of Mark Parkhurst on the overall grid, moves up to P26 from P28. As he crossed that timeline, we've got a couple of drivers still yet to get to their final lap, including what is Jim Fox. And well, we've got 2.5 minutes left on the clock. Remember, when the clock strikes 15 minutes, that's it in terms of qualifying. If you're on a lap, that lap gets cancelled, it gets annulled, and therefore we will go with the best lap you set up to that point. So therefore, a number of drivers right now, I think, wary of the fact that if they are out there, well, they bought themselves plenty of time. And the downside of it all being in the fact that have they got time to actually deliver the lap they're expecting. As Fox makes his way out of turn number 8. Meanwhile, we look to the man who delivered in qualifying last time out as well at the Watkins Glen circuit, and it was Eduardo Andino. And it didn't quite work out for Andino as much he would have liked it to in the races, much like with Adil Chowdhury, where it was a closely fought fight between the two of them in qualifying. But right now, Andino making his way on around in the McLaren 720S Evo, and as he comes up towards the timing line, well, this is going to be going on to his final flying lap. He won't squeeze in another lap here with 1.5 minutes left on the clock, I don't think. So it's going to all be on this, and he does improve. So he stays P10 in Evo class, or P35 overall. So Andino there struggling. Chowdhury at 2 places behind him on the Evo grid. So a lot of drivers were fast in the dry at Watkins, struggling here in the wet, but it's not easy to be fair, and you're seeing a whole mix-up of names. We look at the overall positions on the left-hand side of your screen. We'll look at some surprises. Perhaps not a surprise is Luis Pereira and Peter Duke at the top, albeit the half a second plus gap between Luis Pereira and Duke is a surprising one at that. And then you do have Robin Aston, then Jan Oosterberg, and then look at who is P5. Your Evo provisional pole sitter of Wesley Van Rens, as Fox jumps up to P20 there on a 201.558. But Van Rens absolutely delivering a phenomenal pole lap in the Evo class and puts himself firmly inside the top 5 overall. That is going to make it very hard to shift. Bert Tenket as well, P12 there, the second place Evo driver. That is an achievement, and it shouldn't be laughed at. But meanwhile, surprises down the order. Well, a couple there include Nick Stubb down in P25 in the 169. Also, Andre Montine in P24, and not a welcome surprise. Edel Chowdhury down in P40 out of what is our 48 or so drivers. Also, Gordon Hales is all the way down in P47. He's not on the timing tower there, given the fact how far down he is at the moment. He's down in P47, the driver who put it on pole at Watkins Glen. So this is completely shaking things up, and in good time too, because we do see James Fraser making his way out of turn number 3 and in towards turn number 4. Well, the clock is about to strike 15 minutes. There it goes, and that means qualifying is complete, ladies and gentlemen, and it's time to head to the grid for our one and only race of the day here at the Portimão Grand Prix Circuit. And as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our one and only race today in round number 2 of the championship at the Autodromo International do Algarve, as it's known in full. Ricardo Luis Pereira has taken pole position overall and in what is the Premier Class for Vulcan Motorsport Silver. He will be joined on the front row of the grid by none other than Peter Duke for DDK Racing Team, who is going to have a little bit of a challenge to prove to himself today that he can take victory. Robin Aston starts P3 for Suma GP2, and he'll be joined on the second row of the grid by Jan Oosterberg, the Swede, for Nyfors at Glass Tech Racing. We'll then see, starting on what is the Evo pole position, P5 overall with an absolutely phenomenal qualifying lap, the man from the Netherlands, the Flying Dutchman, flying high in terms of his performance. It will be at Racing League Hub's Wesley Van Rens, and he'll be joined on row number 3 by James Bostock, who's pulled off a surprise qualifying performance with the Carme GP2 Porsche driver putting it P6 on the grid. Well done to him. Matthew Croft starts his day P7 for Z-Axis Sim Sports ahead of Dean Sheesby for Moonshiners Racing Club, and then on row number 5 to complete the top 10, it'll be Sander Tabbers for Sim Racing Team Lowlands and Stuart Rice, the privateer. From the Britain to a fellow countryman, it'll be Krista Stalsmore, who starts P11 for Simcast Racing UK. And then we'll have, joining him on row number 6, your second place Evo qualifier, and that is Bert Tenket for Sim Racing Team Lowlands. And the Dutchman is followed up then on row number 7 by the Englishman Jon Ludbrook for Carme GP2 Porsche and Jan Nagy for Nyfors at Glass Tech Racing. We'll then come to the Romanian driver, Christian Malaskov for Rano Academy. Keep your eyes out for him. He was one of those drivers who put on some brilliant performances at Watkins Glen, and he'll be hoping to be rewarded today, starting P15, with Ros Norsworthy there starting P16 alongside him for Simcast Racing UK. Robert Nobles begins his day P17, and the American is in the company of the Briton of Gareth Newton for Carme GP2 Porsche, and then we do have Menno Blum and Jim Fox for Sim Racing Team Lowlands and the Privateer respectively, completing what is your top 20. Then coming outside the top 20, we've still got plenty of places to go, including Liam Fraser, who begins at P21 here for Moonshiners Racing Club. He has Sean Clark for company for DXT Motorsports. Adam Baker will start in what is P23 for LS Racing B, and Andre Montine begins at P24 for Z-Axis Sim Sports. We then do have Nick Stubb, who starts P25 for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech, and it's Danny Veer for DXT Motorsports, who starts P26, completing the 13th row as the full formation lap gets underway. Dale Williams starts P27 for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech, and Mark De Vries starts P28 there for Sim Racing Team Lowlands in a struggle of a qualifying session for the Dutchman. He'll be hoping for more in the race, and then Mark Parkhurst begins his day behind him, P29 for Z-Axis Sim Sports. Road Turkofur starts P30 there for MJK Sim Racing, and from the Dutchman it's to the German of class Velen for Nyfors at Glass Tech Racing. One of the stars of race number 2 at Watkins Glen, but it wasn't to be in qualifying, it would seem, for the 1-2-3 driver, with James Pallett beginning behind him P32 for Racing League Hub. And then Rob McKee starting P33 for DXT Motorsports. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll like Rob, and he knows that, and he's going to have to try and find his way all the way to the front of the field, with Rob Gregg starting P34 alongside for Moonshiners Racing Club. It's then going to be the Evo pair of Eduardo Andino and the Argentine in the company of Grant Miller from Scotland for Phoenix Racing. And then row number 19 will go to James Fraser for Moonshiners Racing Club ahead of Antti Quaranta for Vulcan Motorsport Silver. From the Frenchman to the Englishman James Howarth, he starts P39 for DXT Motorsports in a difficult qualifying session as well for the Ford GT driver, the Ford Mustang GT driver I should say. And Edward Chowdhury starts P40 for Rhino Academy. The Canadian driver is going to have a lot of drivers ahead of him, and it's going to be hard work. We'll then see on P41 or row 21 on the grid, it'll be Mark Wesley of the privateer ahead of Craig Tillerson for Rhino Academy, with Denny Plerga starting P43 for MJK Sim Racing in the company of Daniel Paul, who completes your 22nd row of the grid for Flatline Racing. And then on row number 23, it will be Steve Rubino for Hobo Racing ahead of DXT Motorsports Alex Boniface. And then on the final row of the grid, to round out your 48 starters, Gordon Hales starts P47 for Lumen Motorsport. And the South African driver is joined in the company of the Dutchman of Henry Coolen for Sim Racing at Team Lowlands. So 48 starters, and I look out my commentary booth window and I can tell you immediately that in fact we do have a few drivers who've opted to start from the pit lane, and they do include the pairing of Robin Aston and Gordon Hales. So therefore a few drivers here deciding to play it safe. We are going to bring the tyre compound data up on the screen for you, ladies and gentlemen. You'll see it there on the time in town. You'll notice that everybody starting on the wet tyre as enshrined by the blue circle around the letter W. And when they go to the slick tyre, we'll see it become a black circle with the letter D inside, and that could be a tell in terms of who is going to gamble on the tyre change and how early they're going to do so, because it looks like there's still a lot of water out there, albeit there's not going to be as much water if the rain holds off. Although I say that, we actually come down to what is on board with our P5 starter of Wesley Van Rens, who's moved up to P3 as a result of drivers in front of him starting from the pit lane. And the Dutchman here, well, in starting on what is this almost front row of the grid for an Evo driver, it's a very rare occurrence. In fact, I don't think it's happened the last couple of seasons. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Van Rens right now, after qualifying, we've seen as though this could be a race. If he nails it from the start and keeps his head cool, he might be able to absolutely charge away with this. But the same could be said for many a driver here, and it could just be just as much about avoiding getting involved in any troubles as it is about outright pace. But for one driver here, he'll know that his pace, if he can nail it at the start, could lead it through to victory. It'll be Ricardo Luis Pereira after that brilliant pole position by 5.5 tenths over Peter Duke. Well, they line up together here, and those 5.5 tenths are worth nothing at the race start, other than he'll be ahead. But can he be leading into turn number one? Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to find out in round number 2 of the championship. And it's go, go, go here for round number 2 at the Portimão Grand Prix circuit as Luis Pereira immediately goes on green. And as they roar their way down towards turn number 1, the whole field cascades into the opening braking zone here. And Van Rens being swallowed up a little bit around the outside Jan Ostberg, as meanwhile the rest of the field comes on through. It gets very, very tight there as it's almost 3-4 wide in the mid-pack. Robert Noble's there staying out of trouble. There's Jan Nuggie and Liam Fraser as all the field comes on through. More drivers safely making the way through here. It's a brilliant start from everybody involved. And you can see there Sean Clark battling side by side with Eduardo and Dino as they come under braking 2 by 2 they go. It's almost as if they're on a formation lap, albeit they've picked up the pace here as they come through turn number 3. I can promise you it's not an extra formation lap. They're all battling right now, and side by side Denny Plerga trying to go around the outside of Grant Miller. Miller's brave to take that inside line on cold wet tyres on the opening lap, and he's going to hold on to it in the Ford at Mustang. And as they come through, Plerga is forced backwards towards Quaranta as Anthony Quaranta here looking for an opportunity in the BMW M4 up the inside under braking here, albeit you're going to see the massive Concertina effect quickly get triggered off here. Quaranta swings to the inside there, ducks up the inside of Grant Miller and sees that everybody's going slowly and says, okay, if you're all going to go slowly and form a traffic jam, I'll just simply take to the escape road, which is up the inside. So brilliant opportunism there from the Premier driver. But looking back up towards the bottom end of the top 20, Minna Blum trying to keep Nick Stubb behind him as they come out of the right-hander of turn number 8 and over the crest. You can see Stubb trying to catch up versus the Ferrari driver, but the Porsche driver not quite in a happy space right now with regards to the feeling of the car as he makes his way on the inside line through turn number 9, but realises very quickly why you can't take that inside line in the wet as comfortably. But behind, Gareth Newton and Jim Fox Fox fighting, and in two sister machines here, what is the Kame GP2 car versus the Suma GP2 car, and it will be Fox who gets ahead of his Evo rival, albeit the Premier driver making some early progress as they come on through and in towards that braking zone for turn number 13 they go, and as they do, well, right now everyone starts to calm down as we do switch those class positions. But at the very front of the field, after one lap, he's already pulling away. Luis Perez had a brilliant start to this race, and Peter Duke is already falling back to almost 1.5 seconds off as they head towards that timeline. So one lap complete, we've got plenty to go over 60 minutes, and it's Luis Perez who leads ahead of Duke P2. We then have Österberg at P3 with Wesley Van Rens, your leading Evo driver in P4. Great start for him. James Bostock has held on to P5 so far as they make the way on down ahead of Matthew Croft P6, Dean Sheesby P7, albeit we can see here Sheesby having to go defensive. Sander Tabers in the Corvette looks to move around the outside, not going to find it into Primera corner, but what he will find is the cutback opportunity through 1 into 2 if he can carry the momentum. He can't quite versus Sheesby, and Sheesby holds on. Stuart Rice is in P9 ahead of Christopher Starsmore, what is the second highest place Ferrari, and then we do have best the rest Jon Ludbrook in P11 with Christian Malaskov having a brilliant start to his race. He's up to P12 already, so Malaskov having a fantastic start, and meanwhile Burton Kate behind in P13. We're your second place Evo driver, and your third place Evo driver is a further 3 place find in P16. It's Robert Nobles, who was gained 1 place on Jan Nagy at the start of the race. We did see them battling side by side down into turn number 1, and we saw the big cascade effect, and Nobles right now feeling very alive in this Acura, and we did say in the qualifying session the Acura does have some very strong electronics for wet driving conditions, and you'll see Nobles has got those turned on, albeit they're all legal of course. It's terms of the traction control and anti-lock braking systems, but the American stroke Japanese machine, well, right now in a very happy place. It makes its way on through under the guise of Robert Nobles in the number 22. But looking further back, James Fraser enjoying some fight to Mark De Vries as he tries to pull away from Road Turkruer as they make the way onwards towards the double right-hander, and we're behind James Pallett also looking to get involved as Denny Plurger side by side. They'll Craig Tillerson trying to hold on after making some great gains at the start, but Plurger going around the outside, but Tillerson's still there. He's not going to just disappear, and as they come through turn number 8, well, Tillerson right now absolutely digging in what was a bit of a touring car-esque look up the inside there, but to be fair, you're using his knowledge of racing touring car racing machines to know you can get away with putting the car on the inside there and force your rival to go wide. And as he makes his way into turns 10 and 11, we can see Grant Miller up the inside there of Eduardo Andino in a similar move, absolutely going all in. Andino biffs him on the back and says, hey, what are you doing? And Miller says, I'm passing you, as they make the way up the hill, but Andino being completely caught shy and napping there, and Miller going defensive into the braking zone, but I think happy on that inside line. But everyone now stacking up here towards the back of the field and behind the two Evo drivers fighting. These all Premier drives, Tillerson, Plager and Howarth on the inside here. It's 3 wide as they make their way into the braking zone, and that is going to be around the outside, I believe, Plager, and what is as well, unless I'm very much mistaken, that is going to other Porsches trying to pick its way through. I think that is going to be Robin Aston who's trying to pick his way up the places as they all come through, and Howarth backing off there with Henry Coolan now on his back. But as they come out of the right-hander and on towards the next lap, we can see this Ford Mustang really struggling right now under the hands of James Howarth. He doesn't seem to be in a happy place, and now it's going to be a potential move here being made by what will be Coolan as Alex Boniface tries to get involved, but in fact that straight line speed, and it's all for naught it would seem in that Acura as Alex Boniface up the inside here of Coolan in the out. Oh my goodness, a big moment there, and is that going round for what is our McLaren driver? Yes, it is Adam Baker having a huge moment. He had a disastrous start to the race, I believe. We're going to get a replay of what happened to him at the start, and Baker right now just waited to go once again, but it's all gone wrong. It's gone sideways, and thankfully did not clip the rear of his rival in front of him, because that could have been tantamount to tears. But still, speaking of tears here, Robin Aston won't be crying any tears with Denny Plurger as he puts the position on him down towards turn number 5. Into the braking zone they go as Miller and Andino still fighting there. And just in front of these two, as we can see, Andino going deep into turn 5, and Aston now looking for an opportunity to move on the inside. He's going to do so as Howarth turned in contact with now, I believe that was Tillerson he came into contact with. Now whether Howarth came across Tillerson or Tillerson came across Howarth, I don't know. And well, that's the stewards to decide there. But right now, Harris Race goes from good to bad to worse. It ends up in the gravel. But remember, there's a long distance to go. And also, James Pallett is just parked up there. Oh my goodness, and there's an Audi going very sideways there coming into turn number 8. That is Boniface who's completely gone sideways. Now, why that's happened, I don't know. But we're going to get some replays of this, because it looks as though lap number 3, going on to lap number 4, has ended up being a lap to remember for all the wrong reasons for some drivers. But meanwhile, for all the right reasons, we look back up towards the top 10, and we can see here Matthew Croft. Well, now he started to chase down Wesley Van Rens after a difficult opening couple laps. He's now finding his pace. He's got James Bostock behind, and Bostock has been passed by Croft off camera, and that's a change of position. As looking back down the running order, we can see here Burton Kate in the Acura on the left of your picture. The Evo P2 drive trying to keep Sander Tabbers behind, and Tabbers looking for a move here. He was looking for a move there. He can't quite find it at the moment as we ride on board with what is your Premier Drive Sim Racing Team Lowlands. And with that wonderful dashboard camera there, you get to see the wiper in full action. It gives you an idea of how much rain's having to be displaced by the wipers and therefore the intensity of the conditions. Is that a bit of sunshine I'm seeing up my content booth window on this camera right now? I think we are seeing some sunshine. The clouds are starting to break open on one side of the circuit, and is that a sign of things to come? Well, there's a lot of spray right now. I can tell you one thing, anybody who dares to go on the dry tyre at this point, well, they're going to be wanting to buy themselves a lottery ticket as well if they manage to pull it off. But it does look as though we are starting to see the rain ebb away a little bit, albeit it's not going to be instantaneous. But with the fact that we have got 60 minutes of racing, I wouldn't be surprised if we're on the dry tyre by the end of it, or some drivers are going to gamble to go onto it, and it may become a question of who's willing to extend their fuel tank as long as possible. But meanwhile, forget about the fuel tanks right now, as Peter Duke under pressure here from Jan Österberg as they make the way up through 10 and 11. This is the battle for P2 overall as they come on through, and right now as Luis Pereira is just running away at the front of the field, 3.5 seconds. Österberg up the inside, he looks for it, but in the end Duke just covers it off and says no you don't, and Österberg is getting very impatient here, and I somehow suspect the 199 driver in the Porsche is feeling as though he can be very dicey right now. He's got so much pace in this Porsche, and Duke is struggling by comparison. But going to our point earlier, if there is the fault of the crossover of conditions, we should point out for this round, whilst at the start of the season we did say that feature race rounds will see the fuel tanks limited to 70% to mandate a pit stop. They have been limited to 60% for this round. Due to the wet conditions, it was expected that a 70% fuel tank may actually see some drivers dare to go for the nose stop. They are forced to take a fuel pit stop here, but the question mark will be, if we're seeing the circuit dry later, are some drivers going to go into fuel saving modes early? Now, they can't adjust the fuel map of the car, but they can do things such as lift and coast into corners and run the slipstream of their rivals. As we see there, Österberg taking a very daring line to the inside, practically darting and daring Duke to get out of the way, albeit not looking for the move, and knowing that if he did make contact, well, it would be on Österberg himself and not Duke's fault. But the point is Duke potentially doing a lot of fuel saving right now, as well as perhaps not on the pace of Luis Pereira, and perhaps hoping that if he can go deep into the race, he will get a better time to switch to the dry tyre as he goes defensive there. And you can see Österberg practically pushing him along, and Duke being very, very clever with the way he's positioned the car right now. He's practically putting it in the middle road. He's daring Österberg to fully commit to a move, but Österberg knows there's a lot of standing water on that inside line into the hairpin, so therefore in the end he has to tuck in behind. But right now Duke absolutely ran the limit of what is legal defending, and we love to see it. The fact he knows how to play the rules to his advantage, and Österberg having to find a way through but back it off there, and knowing in the fact that right now he's up against somebody who is proving to not be as porous as perhaps the drains around the circuit as he makes swap through turns 10 and 11. But whilst we've enjoyed all that battling at the front, we've also got battling further down as Tillerson back in the fight with a fellow Premier driver, and this is between himself and Klaas Velen, as Velen, the Lamborghini Huracan Evo driver, the only Lamborghini out there, but not the only Audi powered machine, because you have Alex Boniface, of course, well, the Huracan sharing the same V10 engine as its Audi sister. And as they make their way down towards turn number 5, right now Velen enjoying this battle for P, what is 26 in the Premier class versus rival. In fact, as they make their way through, it's the battle for P39 overall. As you can see, the field getting very close and testy to each other, as Eduardo Endino battling with Edward Chowdhury just behind him, and James Pallett trying to clear what is the McLaren drivers. They make their way over the crest and in towards what is turn number 7 and then 8, but all these drivers making their way through right now, and everyone's snaking their way on around and just simply trying to get it together. You know, so as soon as they come offline, that's where the test of how much temperature you got in your tyres and how confident you are in your abilities in the car, that really comes into the mix, as that is an absolutely flying move. Meanwhile, around the outside of Mark Wesley for Robin Aston. I think Wesley's got a problem in that Porsche because he's going slowly. Menno Blem is going to go around the outside in the Ferrari 296 as well, albeit Menno Blem's going to go very, 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 very deep, and he just brings it together, but he does have to take a trip to the gravel trap and play sandcastles in it for a brief moment as he makes way into turn 14, and the 122 driver now brings it back, but at what cost? And he loses the place he potentially gained as he comes on through and around. And meanwhile, we look back up to what is the battles inside the top 15. Nick Stubb right now with Ross Norsworthy behind him. Will Stubb trying to hold it together here as we do ride on board very shortly. In fact, there's our on-board picture with Stubb for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing, and behind him is Ross Norsworthy, albeit obscured for a little bit by the rather large rear wing of the Porsche 992. But you can see that they're getting the better traction out of turn number 4, and that's the advantage that the Porsche does have. It will have the best traction of them all in these wet conditions if the driver is able to get his throttle down. And the fact that the weight over the rear will just simply be planted, and then you can point the cars. There was a car off the road there going slowly. I believe that was Fox, who's taken a trip off the road at turn number 5 and relinquishing places down to P19. I'll have to get a story on that when we can, but now things are starting to settle. We've got a few replays to take a look back at, including from the open lap, what happened to Adam Baker on the opening lap, and here's an explanation, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this was Baker on lap number 1 of the day as he made his way on down there through turn number 14. Does the car just simply let go on him? And it does indeed. He just gets a little bit too eager on the throttle pedal, comes loose, and the whole field splits his way around. Brilliant awareness from everybody there, and well done to Baker for holding his brakes and then reversing the car off the road. But an easy mistake to make, and he's had a frustrating day on lap number 2. Meanwhile, we had this for Klaas Velen, the Lamborghini Huracan Evo driver, and this is coming up the rise into turn number 10. Does he just go deep into the corner? No, in fact, he runs deep and takes a bit of the outside curb. And well, when you go onto those curbs, you're only going one way and you are going around. And then subsequently, a little bit late on the lap, we did have an incident for Edel Chowdhury. And this for the Verano Academy driver coming on through turn number 15. The rear of the car lets go on that tight line. Snaps one way, snaps the other. He snaps into a bigger puddle, unfortunately. And the car completely goes round. But brilliant attempt there to try and get it pointed in the right direction. But it wasn't to be. And then subsequently, we had the incident for James Howarth. I think this was the contact between himself and Craig Tillerson coming out of turn number 5. This was on lap 3. Yes, it was. Tillerson runs a bit wide. Unfortunately, loses it there on the exit curb, and Howarth happens to be in the wrong place at the right time to be picked off. And well, a very difficult one there, but I'm sure they'll talk about it afterwards. We also had an incident for James Pallett. It seems as though lap number 3, if your name was James, you were going to have a bit of an incident, and this was the surprise incident we had, and it was Pallett who lost the rear of the car coming into turn number 8 out of 7. And then we did have Alex Boniface take a very strange trip as well in the Audi in a similar fashion. And where did Boniface come from? Well, here he was. The cameraman picked him up in the Audi Evo. Well, what happened there? Very similar manoeuvre, in fact, just goes a little bit loose under braking and has to take to the grass in order to collect the car back together. And well, from that, we did also have an incident for Mark Wesley on what was lap number 6. This will be the last of the replays that we do get for now, and this was coming up in towards turns 10 and 11, goes a bit deep in 10, onto that exit curbing, and you're only going one way. As much as he fights inevitability, it's inevitable he's going to go round there, and well, a bit of unfortunate there for Mark Wesley as we do return to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. Those are some of the replays and the highlights of what was the opening few laps, but of course, we're on lap number 7, we still got plenty more racing to go, so let's come back to the live action. And well, speaking immediately of that, Rob McKee and Liam Fraser fighters. That's Fraser going around the outside of McKee in towards what was turns 10 and 11 by 9. Lovely move from Liam Fraser. And well, that Mercedes, right, as we said earlier, yes, the Mercedes is going to be a bit of a pig to drive in the wet conditions, given how much power it deploys in the lower gears. But if you can master it, you can feel confident in it, like Liam Fraser can, then there's no reason why you can't do well in this car. And he's definitely demonstrating that as they make the way on through. Now, giving a quick update on the class top 3s. In the Premier class, it's Luis Pereira who's leading by 3.3 seconds over Peter Duke. And then we do have Jan Osterberg completing the Premier top 3 in their top 3 overall. Meanwhile, in the Evo class, it's Wesley Van Rens who is leading in the Evo class P5 overall, with Burton K up into P8 now, who's second in the class, and then Jan Nagy in P3. And I believe as he makes his way down the start-finish straight, we can pick him up here. There he is, and Nagy's feeling safe, but meanwhile, Gareth Newton behind, well, he'll be able to see Nagy up the road, and he'll be a little bit annoyed because now Jim Fox is on that recovery drive after the instant that we did hear that Fox had. And well, the reason why Newton will be annoyed in the fact that he now has a different car in front of him. It will be one of the sister GP2 cars, albeit it won't be a Kame car, it will be a Tsuma GP2 car. And well, Fox, he'll be hoping that will just charge off into distance and annoy Nagy and bring the two of them closer together. But speaking of closest together, this is a move between where's a Premier driver and Evo driver. Up the inside of Van Rens goes Croft, and Croft up in a P5 overall now. That's not a change of class position, but he'll still be very happy with that as he makes his way on through it. And we say hello to Stephen Wilkinson in the YouTube chat who's cheering on the Simcast Radio Racing team. And of course, we've got so many teams out here today, and we'll be trying to find them all as their day goes on. But 15 minutes into this race right now, the rain has definitely stopped falling, and you can see the spray off the back of these cars now is starting to get a bit lesser with no rainfall. In fact, the dry line is appearing as we start to get a bit of sunshine on the circuit. That really starts to highlight the dry line as Croft goes very deep there into turn number 10 and 11, and when he brings it back together, that is a very smooth rejoin, albeit I think they're catching out slightly, Van Rens. But the point being that Croft showing that we are starting to see what is slightly warmer conditions materialise with that sun, and that is going to be helping. But looking a bit further down the order to Grant Miller, whose son I do believe there, Hayden Miller, is tuning in right now and cheering on his dad. Well, he's down in P38. It's been a bit of a frustrating start to the day for the number 80 Ford Mustang after what was a difficult qualifying session. He's P11 in the Evo class, but right now he's going to be hoping that that American muscle and the horses will carry him on through with Gordon Hales close behind him. Remember, Hales started from the pit lane, and well, Hales having a bit of a difficult run so far. He's on the wet tyre. Everybody is on the wet tyre, it should be pointed out, so it's not as though we saw our two pit lane starters opt to gamble by starting on what was dry tyres and just seeing the race come to them. I think it would have been way too much of a gamble to do so, given the amount of water we had on the circuit, at least for the opening 10 minutes. You'd be practically going around for corner to corner as Miller goes round there, and it goes from good to bad to worse. He rolls backwards onto the grass. He's got to now try and get the car unstuck and uphill. It's going to take him some time. He will get it turned around in the end. He's going to have to roll it backwards as there's another car coming, and that's Mark Wesley, who's also had a trip to the weeds there. So Howarth and Wesley both being caught out. Well, not Howarth, I should say. Miller and Wesley being caught out there. James Howarth has cleared it all, but Grant Miller definitely had frustration, and Mark Wesley as well. Two Evo drivers who've had things go backwards very quickly. But coming back to Evo drivers who are fighting for position, well, this is Nobles versus Newton in the battle for P4 in the class, and that is going to be Nobles in the red and white Acura going a bit deep there into turn number 5, and meanwhile Newton's going to tuck back on the inside as they make the way up the hill, and Nobles fighting with power oversteer there. The car shaking one way, then shaking the other, and as they come on through the left-hander and down in towards turn number 7, well, right now Newton taking that place and not looking back is the Briton, as meanwhile Nobles, I think, looking up the inside. He's got Mark Parkhurst for company immediately behind him, so that is going to be unwelcome news as we ride on board here with a third member in what is his menage a trois as they roar their way in towards turns 9, 10 and 11. You can see there Nobles taking that inside line into turn 9 initially. I think with some sunshine coming out, he's realising, okay, I can go a bit faster, and then suddenly also realising, no, there's a lot of standing water there. I don't want to be on the inside into turn 9 on entry. That is going to completely kick the car around, but the enthusiasm is there, and that's great to see. And Parkhurst right now trying to get involved in this battle, but they're all having to be relegated to one line. As you can see, Newton goes very, very deep. In fact, there's more grip on the outside of turn 13, or at least he's finding it. We made to the conventional line. Of course, racing in the wet is a completely different beast to racing in the dry, because you've got to find the lines where there's not the standing water and there's the right balance between water versus what is the grip on the circuit. Because, of course, as they make the way on around here, they naturally displace the water more and more the more laps they accumulate, and that grip will change. You'll naturally move more towards the racing line as the circuit gets dry, but you won't get there completely straight away because you have that standing water, and that's what you've got to wait for to disappear. But it's a gambling act, of course. As you can see, all the spray being kicked up there, Nobles and Newton up the road, but they all stay as they were as they head in towards turn number 1. But making the way on through, and well, from this battle for P4 in the Evo class, we do look a little bit further up the order to what is Dean Sheesby, who right now has got Jon Ludbrook closing behind him, and Ludbrook is flying out there at the moment. He's not the fastest driver overall. The fastest driver overall at the moment would be your race leader of Luis Pereira, who is lapping in the 57s. He's the only driver lapping in the 57s. What on earth has happened there? And what I believe that is Jon Ludbrook taking a race of action as Nick Stubb goes deep. He cuts his way between the drivers. He almost slops himself through like a jigsaw puzzle, and well, good time, but Stubb comes back on, and Sander Tabbers and Ros Norsworthy and Jim Fox are all queuing up behind him. And that was a very closely intermingled moment, and well, as they make the way on through the right under turns 7 and 8, I would imagine that Stubb right now has got his heart in his mouth, as meanwhile that is a car running wide there. I'm trying to discern who that is, and well, as he brings it back onto the circuit, we'll find out in due course. But right now Stubb definitely there, having a huge near miss as Sander Tabbers. Well, he's got a lot of pressure going from Norsworthy and Fox behind as Tabbers goes straight on. The car hasn't stopped, and in the end he ends up into the gravel. Can he keep it going? Yes, he can, but there Tabbers, I think, completely misses his braking mark, and the car just rolls on. He rejoins, and perhaps a little bit too much enthusiasm, but Sander Tabbers completely missing the mark. Can we get a replay of what happened there? Yes, we can, and here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Let's ride on board and listen in. And you can see there what he's trying to do. He started to feel as though the circuit's drying, so he's thought, okay, I'm going to take a bit more of a dry line there, and then suddenly realising way too late, you know what, there's not enough length of road there for me to brake because the circuit's still wet. I've still got water on the tyres, but he thankfully keeps it out of the wall and is able to go racing. But for Sander Tabbers, that will be a bit of a frustrating one, because he'll know that he's lost a lot of places. He's worked very hard to gain in that Corvette Z06, and well, to be fair, he's been one of the stronger performers inside the mid-pack so far, but he's now got to do it all over again as we come back to your live pictures temperatures on lap number 11. We're 20 minutes into this 60-minute race. We've still got a long way to go here, and well, we've still got that all-important pit stop to throw into the mix, but everyone so far opting to stay out. Nobody daring to dip to the pits, and I suspect it will be because of the fuel tank restrictions, but also the fact that everyone is waiting for the first driver to potentially identify that it is now dry conditions. So we do see a swap of places there. Rice going out the outside in the Acura versus Rolled Turf Courier as they come in towards turn number 1. Side by side, there's a tap between the two of them. They survive it. No, they don't. And Stuart Rice in the end, well, he's made to go out very, very wide. There's going to be a lot of standing water and puddles out there on the exit road as that's going to be up the inside there. Mark De Vries. And De Vries in the end, I think he was already committed. He didn't expect that Acura to rejoin the way it did. But De Vries will take P19, the Premier class, off of Rice. But I think all three drivers there will be all having a chat afterwards with regards to what exactly happened there. But getting very close between them as they make the way onwards. But as they roll their way down towards the braking zone, well, they get some separation for now and in good time as well, as I believe we have had a couple of incidents happen off camera on this lap. And well, I'm hearing in my ear there's been something that's happened to Robert Nobles and Gareth Newton. Whether they're entwined or whether they're separate incidents, I'm not sure. But one thing I'm certain of is we're going to get a replay of it, because we're going to see right now what happened to Robert Nobles. And this was Nobles coming down towards turn number 5. Now, he was running at the time inside the top 15. Into the braking zone he went. And as he did so, all the way on the brakes. Oh, no. And it's all gone wrong down to braking. And that explains why Gareth Newton's been collected as well. And Nobles having to tow to the pits there. That shunt immediately, damaging the suspension and seeing his race come to an end well before it can make the halfway point. And Gareth Newton has carried on out there, but I can suspect there's some significant damage on the car. And that's also going to be hurting him. So that's unfortunate for Nobles and Newton. A very easy mistake to make. But meanwhile, as we come back to live racing pictures, well, there could be some more change of the foot here, as Wesley Van Vens, your leading Evo driver, will right now, I think, feeling the pressure of a queue of Premier drivers all queuing up behind him, and I think saying to him at this point, look, you've had a good run. Can you let us by, please? As Van Vens absolutely snake bites himself into the braking zone there and up the inside in the battle behind. That is Christoph Starsmore making a move on Dean Sheesby. Well, in fact, no, it's Sheesby on the inside of Starsmore, but Starsmore going defensive around the outside to the inside of 4. They're still fighting each other. And oh my goodness, and that's Jon Ludbrook. Ludbrook in the end ends up almost going to the barrier. I think just simply trying to get a free wide going there, but in the end gets it wrong. And Ludbrook catches the car. He has to run along the wall a little bit, or at least on the grass. But that was a near miss. But Sheesby versus Starsmore is now carrying on a little bit, or is it? No, in fact, Starsmore's struggling here as they come through 5 into 6, and Sheesby gets the move done, and Bert Kincaid comes on through. And right now, the Acura driver, who's second place in the Evo class, he has been silently moving forward over the course of the distance. It's been some phenomenal driving here. It must be said from the 72 driver from the Netherlands. And as he makes his way on down, well, I'm not going to praise him too highly because I seem to have the commentators curse on me when I do so, but as he makes his way up the hill in towards turns 10 and 11, the point being here, he's picking his way past the Premier drivers and he's getting closer to the Evo leader. He might have been a long way away in qualifying, but in the race conditions, he's very close right now, and the pace is absolutely phenomenal. In fact, he is what is the third fastest driver overall out there at the moment is Kincaid, and it's being shown as everybody right now behind. As we can see, Ross Norswell, he's gone very deep in the Simcast Racing Team Ferrari, and loses all those places. One mistake here, it's costing you 5-6 places. They get very tight, and that is a very slow running. What is Jim Fox? He's being passed up the inside by Nick Starr. I think Fox might be struggling for grip out there, and as they cover through, well, one driver has changed the dry tyre. Meanwhile, off camera, it's Gareth Newton. He's gone all in with the damage he picked up after that contact with Nobles. He's decided there's nothing for me to lose, so everyone now will be eagerly watching what happens with Newton's lap times and whether the transition is possible. But still coming to what's happening on screens right now. Stubb, Fox and Norsworthy coming on down, but it's going to be Fox and Norsworthy here are 2 wide. The Ferrari of Norsworthy on the inside. Here's Stubb in the middle of the road, and as they make the way to the braking zone, it goes wrong, and it's going to be Fox who goes all the way round in the end. And I believe there might be a little bit of contact there with Norsworthy, but as Stubb carries on with Norsworthy, and it's going to be Norsworthy at the inside as they come into turn number 3, through the right, in towards the left they go, but around the outside goes Nick Stubb, and that's a brilliant bit of manoeuvring there to take with his P9 in the Premier class off of his rival. And Norsworthy there, I think, just being left bamboozled with the pace that Stubb is able to demonstrate, as Jan Nagy behind P3 in the Evo class is watching this and thinking, okay, I don't want to get involved, but it continues as there's a run deep from Stubb after taking all those places, losing it all there very quickly by just running deep into one corner, and as quickly as the hero, he's gone to 0. As meanwhile, Christian Malskov now looks at this in the Verano Academy car, and I think he's just thinking to himself, you know what? if they're all going to fight like this, I might as well just get close and have a pop at it myself. Malaskov has been a very quiet driver so far. Only one place gained since the start, overall in class. But to be fair, in the 107 car, sometimes that's the kind of race you want to have. For the simple reason, if you stay out of trouble, you keep the tyres in a nice condition, you get to your pit stop, and then you can go on the attack in the second half of the race. But I get the feeling, given the fact we're seeing the circuit dry a little bit more and more here, you see that spray really coming off very, very shortly now for our drivers compared to the long distance sprays that we saw earlier. We are almost in dry conditions, something tells me in the back of my mind, or they're going to be getting the call from their spotters soon that we are on a circuit that is effectively almost dry or has a dry line. The only downside of that, of course, will be it's not going to be the water suddenly disappears. The water's there, and if you go for an overtake on dry tyres, you will have to drive on a damp patch or a wet patch of circuits. Overtaking on the slick tyre will become hazardous. It will become real health hazard to your race, but if you can pull it off, you may be able to pull off a miracle. So now a lot of drivers here will be waiting and thinking, when's my turn? As meanwhile, that's elbows out there, coming to Daniel Paul versus Mark Wesley, and well, Paul in the end goes up the inside for P10 in the Evo class. Coming on through there in the lovely lilac blue machine as he makes his way up the rise versus the light blue machine of Wesley. Wesley's not backed out of this too much yet as they come into turn number 6, but I think the two will be separated for now, and well, the battle between them will go on to the next few corners with Grant Miller on the attack versus Adel Chowdhury, and well, these two have both had difficult races so far. Chowdhury just hasn't made that much progress, so he was involved in an incident on lap number 3 that we weren't able to get a replay of, but the point being here with Miller's spins as well, it's been a race for them both to forget, but they've still got more to do. But as our drivers make the way on through, well, roaring the way on around, we do look all the way to what is your race leader, meanwhile Ricardo Luis Pereira, and he's having a very happy race at the moment. And well, as they come on through in towards what is turn number 13, in towards 14. Well, these drivers absolutely delivering some brilliant driving right now, and we're coming in towards turn 14 down to the braking zone, where it does look as though right now Luis Pereira in a very, very happy state and not having to worry about anything at all, but rolling on through and in towards the next set of corners. Well, whilst all this is going on, well, it's great to see so many of you giving your thoughts on the race, and including there Musi, also David de Jong, also there what is Marius Hibma, or Hibma I should say, and I hope you're all having a great time so far, because I can tell you one thing, it's getting absolutely brilliant out of the circuit, as we do see there Luis Pereira trying to find some wet track surface to cool those tyres down. We are almost in dry conditions surely, and in terms of our reference marker, well, right now that lap from Luis Pereira was a 58.1. Meanwhile, where is Gareth Newton in terms of pace? Well, Gareth Newton's lap time in the meantime, we're just trying to get some numbers. Well, his last lap was a 3-minute 08.84, but I suspect that was a pit lane exit lap. We will try and get Newton's lap when it comes on through. We are waiting for that information, but a few drives towards the back end of the Evo class, now ducking into the pit lane, I suspect. Newton's lap was a 2-minute 10.598. It's nowhere near close at the moment, but was that impeded with traffic? We've got no data to explain, but what we can tell you right now is that it's a circuit that is almost close to dry. But as the drivers make the way on around, well, meanwhile, we do look to Christopher Starsmore here, still battling with Bert Tenkate, and Tenkate is absolutely flying, like you say, David de Jong in that Evo class. He's not quite on the back of Wesley Van Rens. He's still got what is Jon Ludbrook between himself and what is the Evo leader, but right now it's definitely looking as though it's going to be a battle of the two Dutchmen all the way to the finish. And Christopher Starsmore here, I think he's feeling that he wants to get involved versus Tenkate, but he's also worried about the fact that after everything that happened previously between himself and a couple of his rivals, that he doesn't want to end up picking up any more contact on the car. He's going to look to the inside, but again, a little bit of trepidation there. Bit of an odd one. I think he wanted to go for the move, but something in the back of his mind saying that don't do it. And well, not quite sure what that is, but you can see a lot of gravel that's been kicked across the circuit. They're all going to drive through it. They'll put some chips in the paintwork, albeit they won't mind there. And as they make the way towards turn number 7, they stay in line of stern formation for now, but Dean Sheesby is closed up on the back of this, and Sheesby will want to get involved as they make the way around. And in fact, is that Jon Ludbrook? That's Ludbrook who's had a go round at what was turn number 8, and as they go over the rise, well, there's a front bumper missing suddenly, and that is a front bumper missing on Sheesby's car. He's going to go past all 3 of them. Dean Sheesby just picks his way on through, and that is a brilliant bit of manoeuvring there from Sheesby. I think capitalising on the fact that with Ludbrook getting himself back on the racing line, Starsmore and Tenkate didn't know what to do, and Sheesby just saw it all and used all the experience as a Premier driver and a veteran of this series to simply go, okay, I'll pick you off 1, 2, 3, and they're all for me. But let's take a look back at that on board with Sheesby and see how he did it. And now look at this, ladies and gentlemen. So right now as they come through, nobody knows that Ludbrook's rejoining, and then suddenly see him. Tenkate checks up, Starsmore's too close to take evasive action, and Sheesby just simply goes, well, if you're going to leave that big a door open, I'll just simply sail on through and get the move done. But Sheesby there, an absolute opportunist, but using his knowledge and experience in order to get it done well. But as we return to your live racing pictures, we're at the halfway point of the race now, and Cheeseby, despite a front bumper, that's going to cost him a lot of speed on the straights, but it won't cost him too much at the corners. But further back, Burton Kate here's now got Nick Stubb trying to pick his way through. Stubb here flying on up the inside as they make the way down in towards turn number 1, and 10K is quite smart, he backs out of it, but that's very, very on tenterhooks there as they come through turn 1 into 2, because leaving the pit lane, that's Adam Baker, and I believe, unless I'm mistaken, Baker has gone on to what is the dry tyre, and well, as he makes way on through, let's see if we can get confirmation that yes, he has. So we have got Baker, Malaskov and Fraser on what is the dry tyre. In fact, Christian Malaskov into the pit so early, he's seen something, he's going to gamble on this, is Malaskov. Now, I think this is a big gamble for the Rhino Academy driver, but I can tell you one thing, he might as well go for this here, albeit I think some repair work's being done on the car as well, so there's been some sort of incident for Malaskov that we haven't seen. We will see if we can find out what exactly happened to Christian Malaskov, who was running very happily, and in fact, it happened a couple of laps ago. We are going to get a replay of it shortly, what happened to Christian Malaskov, but he knows he's got nothing to lose going to the dry tyre, so everyone who's gone to the dry tyre has been in a race that's been compromised of some description, as meanwhile, that is a compromise there from our Porsche driver, has gone very deep, trying to discern who that was, couldn't quite make it out there, but I can tell you is that was a car, I think that was a lap down, and therefore trying to bring itself together as Nick Stubbs just made its way on through, and indeed that was one of the Porsches that is a lap down, and therefore not having a happy day at the office at the moment. But as the drivers make the way on through, well, Starsmore on the attack, but what about Stuart Rice further back? Yes, so you're asking him, well, that is Mark de Vries looking up the inside versus the Ferrari driver in towards the break. Well, in fact, Mark de Vries in the Ferrari, I should say, versus the Acura of Rice. And will Rice trying to look for the move there, couldn't quite find it. And the Ferrari driver of de Vries right now holding on as they come through turn 7 and 8 and over the crest. But across the rise and down in the dip they go. And as they do, well, Rice there eager to make a move, but that eagerness not being rewarded this time. And I think right now just having to play the patience game and know he's got the pace under his fingertips, but he's got to pick the right place in order to make the attack. And that is the hard part of the work. But from them, well, we do have Dean Shearsby into the pit lane as we look back up inside the top 10 of the Premier class. And this is Ludbrook versus Starsmore. And, well, with everything that's going on at the moment, well, if we have got a couple of drivers into the pit lane from the lead group, but that's Starsmore up the inside of Ludbrook. And, well, that's going to be a partial position. That's up to P6 in the Premier class of Starsmore. But Ludbrook's going to try and come back at him, but he won't with a tail slapper like that as they make the way on through turn number 3 and in towards 4. But as they make the way on through, Starsmore there gets the place into his hands, and Ludbrook just not happy with the setup of that Porsche. Needs wet conditions. It's just not rewarding him the way he wants it to. You can see the way he's trying to drive it versus the way the car wants to be driven. They're 2 poles apart, and that explained the moment earlier on at turn number 8, and he explained there as he tried to get the power down at turn number 4 why the car is just refusing to point in the right direction. Starsmore meanwhile gets things done, but from that, why is Dean Shearsby so important? When he leaves the pit lane, he is the first of the top 10 Premier drivers and the first of the top 15 drivers overall. He's come out of the pit lane on dry tyres. Look at him as he slides around coming out the pit lane. He's struggling for grip, but if he can get some tyre temperature and get himself onto this dry line, Shearsby right now could become the big marker and essentially point out to everyone, look, it is time to come into the pit lane. And as he makes his way in towards turn number 3, will we see a reaction from any drivers here? Because Shearsby, if he is able to set purple times, you would expect that everyone is suddenly going to leap into the pits as Ricardo Luis Perez sets the fastest lap of everybody just now on a 56.10, your race leader. So those lap times are coming down, and here is your race leader right now, and the Acura is absolutely flying out there. And well, Shearsby's just a bit further up the road, so in fact, Shearsby's been able to keep himself on the lead lap thereabouts. But Luis Perez right now, I don't think he'll want to pit until he knows there is value in pitting. And he's bought himself the best part of a 7.5 second gap, and it's a gap of comfort, no doubt about it. As Jan Osterberg, meanwhile, in all of this, has got ahead of Peter Duke, and that's happened at quite a few laps ago between the two. In fact, back on lap number 10, we did see a change for position between these two, and we've got a replay of that very shortly. In fact, it will take us back a few laps, but I think it's a story that we'd love to see how the changes did happen between them. And here's the replay, ladies and gentlemen, and this was much earlier on in the day when the conditions were still very wet, and, well, as Osterberg made his way through at turn number, I believe that's turn number 12 in towards 13. Peter Duke lost it there coming into 13, and that's how Osterberg got him through. And Duke was struggling, and well, that struggle definitely materialised, and Osterberg almost lost it as well coming out of 13, and well, in the end bringing it together. But we head back to your live pictures and to much drier conditions now. Back to those live pictures. Goodness me, how the circuit has changed over the course of what has been 7.5 laps. But the point being here, those conditions are catching out many a driver, even the faster drivers out there. But it seems like drying conditions right now could still catch a driver out. And speaking of catching somebody out here, it's 2 Ferraris going going into turn 6, and it's going to be Starsmore on the inside versus Van Rens, and Van Rens in the end doesn't fight it, lets it go on the Simcast Racing Premier Machine in the 110. That is Christopher Starsmore, makes his way up into P6 overall. A change of position once again, and there's those overall positions, and as you can see right now, in terms of the top 30, the only driver on the dry tyre or the slick tyre is Sheesby. Everybody else still on the wet, and nobody wanted to come into the pit, so that's Alex Boniface going slowly. I think just taking evasive action there with the blue flags, but the point being that right now everyone still wants to be on that wet tyre, albeit Van Rens, he's got a lot of pressure on Ludbrook and Stubb behind. And surely Van Rens has got to be thinking about letting these drivers go, given the pace he's got. But look at this from Stubb. He's going to try and go around the outside of both of them, but he runs out of radius to do so, and then he has to back off. But Stubb's confidence, well, it has to be applauded here, as meanwhile Jon Ludbrook is going to try and do the same at turn 14 on Van Rens, but Van Rens just keeping to that inside line, and, well, it's going to be too wide here into turn 15. This is going to be a challenge of who's the bravest coming through the corner, and the answer is Ludbrook's brave, but he's not that brave to try and hold it all the way around the outside, and Van Rens meanwhile makes his way out of the corner, but now Ludbrook gets the overspeed here from the toe and the switchback down the start for the straight, but that Ferrari is fast on the straights all the way up to 5th gear. You can see the Porsche is struggling, but finally gets along the inside into the brain zone. A turn of 1 they go, and Ludbrook takes the position for P7. Van Rens meanwhile still keeps the cork in the proverbial bottle versus Nick Stubb. Stubb goes a bit wide there, runs out onto the exit curbing, albeit that exit curbing is drying gradually, and therefore is able to keep it pointed in a straight line, with Burton Kate a little bit further back, 6 seconds back, and not really staying close. But whilst all this is happening, well, meanwhile, a bit of a surprise, and a driver we haven't really talked about so far today. Now, that's James Bostock. He put it P6 on the grid in qualifying in those changeable conditions, and look at him here. He's very comfortable in P4 right now, and just running right behind Peter Duke. And Bostock, fair to him, the Carme GP2 driver, is absolutely enjoying this circuit right now. He may not be the fastest driver in the dry conditions, but if anything, it feels though we're watching a bit of a Jenson Button moment here, with the fact he's really enjoying these wet conditions, and where if he can get the timing right to switch that dry tyre, he will be able to maintain his place. He's going to look up the inside of Duke there. In fact, he's feeling dicey, is Bostock, and I say go for it, sir, as he makes his way through turn 13 to 14, in the fact that Duke just does not seem to be in a happy place. But Bostock also knowing the fact that yes, you can go for it, but you've got to be smart when you go for it. And also with Matthew Croft closing up behind, well, Croft right now is looking very eager to get involved in this battle, and this would be for a proverbial spot on the podium overall, and also in the Premier class. They come through the final corner. Does anybody defect to the pits? Well, the Avrano Academy McLaren driver of Wes Edel Chowdhury comes on in from the Evo class, will be a lap down, but he will be another reference marker that Jan Osterberg comes into the pit lane. Here he comes, and he decides it's time to go to the dry tyre. Where are Sheesby's lap times, I hear you ask? Well, Sheesby's lap times are practically matching the fastest times being set right now by our leaders, so we are in dry territory here, and Osterberg coming in. I think Osterberg might have done the right job here in coming on in, but as Bostock looks up the inside of Duke, he gets on the inside to turn number 3. Croft tries to make it 3 wide, but realises he can't, and Duke's defending on the inside into 4. That's going to be very slippery on that inside line. They come too wide through, but look at Croft behind. He gets the overspeed, but it's not enough. But Bostock's going to try and go all the way around the outside here, down to turn number 5. Will he be able to do it? Well, Duke will use that inside line. He'll use his confidence on the brakes, but he'll take him deep into the corner. Bostock switches it back here as they make the way out the rise, but it's not over yet, as Croft, meanwhile, has the popcorn seat view behind, gets to watch all this in full splendid action from the driver's perspective. And as they come over the crest, Duke holds on for now, but how he's holding on is literally by a sliver, and I don't know how, but it's testament to Duke's ability to place that accurate. It may be a car that's not really obeying his orders right now, but he's forcing it to hold on to this P2 circuit. But keep in mind, all this fighting will mean those who are pitting are going to gain a lot of time here, because they're all on at very old wet tyres, and right now it seems as though you want to be on the dry compound to get the best possible times out there, with 21 minutes left on the clock as they come in towards turn number 13. But Duke having to keep Bostock and Croft at bay, and Croft now is going to look at a golden opportunity as Bostock goes all in. He absolutely commits to it, and well, there's an absolute minefield of cars going around there. That's Klaas Vellen and Ross Norris, whereas Bostock rejoins, and I think being surprised there by what happened at the corner. Croft takes evasive action as Bostock rejoins. My goodness, wow, I think Bostock there would have been happy to get the move done if it weren't for what was around him when he came into the corner and saw cars pointing left, right and centre. But in the end, they are able to all emerge from it unscathed in the Premier class. But what exactly happened there around them is the big question. And well, Duke's going to make his way into the pit lane. Peter Duke's not happy anymore with those wet tyres. He's decided it's time to go to dries. I can't do this anymore. Bostock, meanwhile, stays out as Ricardo Luis Pereira is into the pit lane. So James Bostock will, I believe, lead at least one lap of this race here at Portimão. He's going to go the distance. I think this is the wrong call where I think he needed to go to the dry tyre, but perhaps he wants the accolade of taking a lap led, and also he just feels happy on these wet tyres. And to be fair, if he's happy on them, then going the next lap isn't going to make a huge difference, but he's got to be aware of the fact you can look at that dry line right now. Those tyres are going to be getting spiky red hot in terms of those temperatures the longer he stays out. But of course, the longer he stays out, he'll put less fuel in the car to go to the end. We'll put the same amount of fuel, but it'll be a lighter car towards the end, I should say, and it will give him a happier car in the dry for a couple of laps more compared to his rivals. So there is a benefit in going long, but the longer you go, the less pace you may have. But before we come to a replay of everything that happened, well, meanwhile, there's further afoot here in what is the Evo class as Road Turf Kriya comes into the lead of the class and up into P8 with all the pit stops going on. In fact, he's going to be now up into the top 5 for the first time this season for a brief moment. He has still got to pit. As you can see, Peter Duke's left the pit lane. Oh, goodness, and there's contact to the rear of the DDK Racing Team Acura, and that is a mistake there, and it's going to be a horrible one because Duke's car now might be limping on the rear right suspension. The front bumper has come flying off of the car of Turf Kriya, and will the Evo driver, in his enthusiasm, I think has come undone very quickly as James Howarth goes around the outside. But it's absolute chaos here in what is the latter stage of this race, and Turf Kriya now going slowly as he makes his way down towards turn number 5 in a car that's definitely damaged, and I think his race might be coming to an abrupt halt very quickly. He might have to come into the pits at the end of this lap due to being shown what is the proverbial meatball flag. But whilst all that's happening, Yanagi versus Adam Baker, and Baker trying to go around the outside here, and look at that grip on those dry tyres until there's no grip because there's water there on the outside and ends up going into the gravel. And well, Baker's showing if you are on that dry line just how fast you can be, but as soon as you tiptoe your way onto that wet line or go deep into it in the case of the McLaren driver, suddenly all that grip disappears to zero very quickly. So right now the dry tyre is the right tyre to be on, but the problem is there's only one line to be on, so overtaking becomes absolutely hazardous now, as we mentioned earlier, and it means that anybody out there in the wet tyre, they will be losing overall effective time, but they do hold track position for a period of time at least until they've got to pit, and will nobody surely be putting on a second set of wets. That would be absolutely crazy. As meanwhile, Grant Miller being overtaken here by Klaas Vellen, who's trying to go around the outside in the Huracan Evo machine, and he's going to go very wide, and in the end he takes the gravel and then the grass and rejoins via rallycross approach. And Will Vellen right now being passed there by, I believe that's Dean Sheesby, and Sheesby right now making his way on through but struggling there for grip coming down through turn number 14 to 15. They're all struggling out there in terms of being able to run off racing line. Everybody wants to be on the one line, but the problem is they can't all share the same line, otherwise they'd be running in procession. And well, right now these final 18 minutes and that final lap could just be as much about what is just keeping it together as it is about battling. As we can see here, Paul Rum Our turn number 15, a release of position from Vellen to what is Sheesby, letting it go. And Sheesby right now, I think, just trying to take places back as quickly as he can as we look to the class positions on which the left-hand side of the screen. Well, the fastest lap being set out there by what is an Evo driver right now. That's why the Evo class is listed above the Premier class, albeit I suspect that will change towards the end of the race today. But that shows you how topsy-turvy all the laps are. And we're back into the Evo lead after what we have had a pit stop from Road Turf Kriya is fellow countryman and Dutchman Wesley van Rens, who right now up into what is P9 overall, but leader of the Evo class. He still has Burton Kidd behind him, but the gap is 4.5 seconds. But as they make the way on through, and unfortunately we do hear that in the YouTube chat from Denny Plurger, who says unfortunately it's been a technical issue with his wheel and he's had to stop the race. Well, sorry to hear that, Denny, but I do hope you're able to get it fixed for the purposes of round number 3, because we're going to miss seeing you out of the circuit otherwise, seeing you mix things up in the midfield. And I hope you're doing well otherwise, because we've got to see some great racing from you. But as Burton Kate makes one through and trying to do some great racing of his own, as we've got a car off there, that is, I believe, Craig Tillison rejoining after a spin coming out of turn number 5. Well, right now Burton Kate will know it's now a showdown between himself and Wesley van Rens for what is the Evo victory, but he's first got to overcome a 4.6 second gap, and that gap is going in the wrong direction right now. It is expanding, not contracting, and the Ferrari driver Van Rens might be making it 3 wins on the bounce here after the 2 wins in the sprint race, and showing that in fact in these changeable conditions he's just as strong as he is in just being smart and sensible in the races. We do see Tenkate there going all the way in on what is a limbering Porsche, and I believe that Porsche going off the road, trying to see who that was there. And we've also got a McLaren rejoin. Everyone's struggling here, but meanwhile, fastest lap of the race goes to Jon Ludbrook, and then Matthew Croft immediately behind goes even faster. We're down to the 49s now. A 49.0 for Matthew Croft, as meanwhile James Bostock, by staying out there a bit longer, falls behind Croft, falls behind Ludbrook. But look at the amount of time, in fact, that Bostock has made up as a result of going out long. He has lost effective positions because of how quick Croft is, but Bostock right now has in fact caught up to Ostberg, who struggled by pitting so early, and Croft has actually made the most gains. But Bostock's not that far off a batting for the podium here. This race right now for what is the bottom two steps of the Premier and overall podium between Ostberg, Croft and Bostock, this could be very close. Peter Duke is 5.6 seconds back. Don't count him out either. There is Duke in the Acura, making his way down towards turn number 5, but as they make the way through the left-hander, well, right now Peter Duke's got Dean Sheasby closing. Sheasby was the first driver inside the top 30 overall to go to the dry tyre. He's leapt his way all the way back up to P6 overall and P6 in the Premier class, so this has worked out for Sheasby. There's so many drivers here who've been compromised on strategy, but there's been a couple who've made it work. Sheasby has magically recovered his way out the order as he gets very twitchy there out of turn number 8, getting very eager to go on the attack. Bostock has done the opposite by going for the overcut and just staying out there. He's lost positions, but he's gained effective race time, and Matthew Croft has been the one who's gained the most, as that's very close there from Sheasby, getting all the way with the back of Peter Duke. And as they make the way out of the corner, Duke is struggling once again. We ride on board with the second and 2 Acuras here, and the Moonshiners Racing Club driver has got to be thinking right now he needs to pick off the DDK Racing Team car, because if he can, well, right now I don't think overall victory is going to be possible given the fact that Ricardo Luis Pereira is so far up the road. But Sheasby could chase after the podium here, but Duke is proven to be absolutely stubborn as they make the way out to turn number 14. And right now Sheasby looks up the inside there, but realises it's all wet on the inside into turn number 15. Can't do that, but he will get a really good run here. He gets close, he's going to go up the inside. It's going to be a drag race down towards turn number 1, and as they roar the way along, it's going to be Sheasby on the inside, Duke on the outside here, as meanwhile Grant Miller watches from behind a lap down in the Ford Mustang. And as they come down towards the braking zone, well, Sheasby in was the white and blue machine versus the DDK Racing white and green machine of Duke, and it's Sheasby up the inside, and that is for P4. It's a big move from Sheasby, it's a bold move, and it shows that his strategy is paying off here at the Portimão Grand Prix circuit, as he's only got what's the best part of 14 minutes plus the final lap to go. But for Dean Sheasby, how high can he go now is the big question. In the fact the next tyre get up the road is 6.5 seconds away. It's James Bostock, and I get the feeling he might be feeling quite confident here, Sheasby, that he might be able to chase down that podium. With Bostock up into that P3 position, well, still more to come. We've still got cars in the pit lane, including Velen and Pallet, also Kulum in what's the Premier class, so some drivers that are staying out a bit too long. But meanwhile, we look a bit further back to a driver we haven't really talked about in the Acura NSX Evo, and that's Andre Montine in P16, P13 in the Premier class. He's over the back of Jim Fox. And Fox's race, well, it's been up, down and around over the course of the racing today, but right now it's going to try and avoid going down any further as Montine looking up the inside there into turn number 2. Can't quite find it. He's going to have to back off for now, but definitely feeling very eager to try and make that move as quickly as he possibly can. But I think he's going to be made to wait a little bit longer as they make the way over the crest of turn number 4. And well, as they roll the way on through, definitely right now looking eager as Montine. And you can see Fox struggling there, cuts the inside though to go defensive, and Montine right now on the outside, but they're on the dry tyre is Montine, but meanwhile Fox is on the wet tyre in fact, so that's why he's able to take that inside line so comfortably. So Fox right now trying to hold on a second set of wet tyres, or in fact it might even be his first set of wet tyres. In fact, I double check my notes and it is his second set of wet tyres, so I get myself right the first time. But the point being that Fox right now trying to keep it together on a tyre compound that's definitely not ideal on the racing line, but it's ideal off racing line, so that will give him great defensive prowess. But the problem for Fox right now is anytime he goes onto that racing line, he's going to be blistering, he's going to be turning those wet tyres into a slick essentially. He will burn away the tread blocks and he will have a slick tyre by the end of it, but a very hot one with no life left in it whatsoever. But as he comes out to turn number 11, he keeps one team behind even longer here, and the Acura driver, for all the grip he's got on that dry line, he can't go to the wet line, and you can see, look, he goes for it there and immediately has to pull the car back onto the dry line because he's got no grip or ability to retard the car under braking. It just slides, and the Z-Axis Simsport driver now, as they make the way around, with a stricken car there, the Porsche making its way back together. Well, Fox has a slow run out of turn number 14. Behind him is Klaas Velen trying to follow in their footsteps, albeit a lap down. And, well, looking around the outside now, this is going to be brave from Montine. It's going to be a very, very tough move to pull off here, but he will try and get the overspeed onto the start finish straight. But Fox continues to peg him back. And as they make the way down, well, Fox now will go to the inside line there for defence, but also to cool the tyres down. But Montine's going to get a nose ahead here. It's going to be a long run down towards turn number 1, but Montine will feel as though he can get the overspeed, and he finally gets on through, or does he? And the answer is no, he doesn't, as Fox is there, but they both go deep. They both encourage each other to go wide, and as they rejoin, well, Fox is back on here. Well, they're racing on the circuit and off of it, and Fox holds on to the position. Oh my goodness, in the fact that right now Andre Martin, I think, will be looking at this and thinking to himself, okay, what do I have to do to get past that Porsche? And the answer is, I don't know, Andre. I don't know. I don't think anybody watching knows right now, but Jim Fox is showing just how strong a defensive driver he can be. And in the end, Fox refusing to give way. He's racing right now this is for the championship, as he makes me lose my words, but we absolutely love to see it. And this battle continues to rage on as they make the way over the crest into turn number 6. And Martin on the inside here. He's got the grip. He'll be on the inside into 7. Fox, meanwhile, go deep here and just park the car as much as he can, but Martin cuts it back. He's going to go in on the wet line. They rub panels as they come on through, but in the end, Andre Martin finally gets on through, but Jim Fox holds him back lap after lap, corner after corner, but in the end has to relinquish the position. But what a fight, and I think that's going to be candidate for battle of the season when we come to the end of the season. There's Fox there, gets it wrong into turn 10, breaks too tight on the inside line, sends the car out, and well, I can imagine right now all the rhythm, the rhyme and the reason has all fallen away as Sander Tabbles now tries to make an overtake here on Fox today as they head up the rise in towards turn number 13. But now Tabbers is going to come under the same threat here, which is he'll discover he's on the dry tyre versus a driver who's on the wet tyre, albeit that may surprise him, and he's going to very quickly learn as well the fact that he can run on those dry lines, but he's going to have a wet running Porsche that's going to be very defensive, and it's going to have so much more potency, particularly if it can just hold the dry line versus this Corvette that needs that dry line to make the overtake happen. And you see again the difference in speed as they come out of turn number 15, the fact that Tabbers in the end gets a brilliant run here, and Fox just has to hold that inside line, go defensive, and that speed differential become more and more pronounced. But Tabbers knows he can't go onto that inside. He'll recognise that there's a wet compound on that Porsche. They make the way down, and will it be fireworks like the previous lap? Well, he's going to try and go around the outside. It's Tabbers, and Fox in the end keeps in there as that's the car. Hold up a second. Is that Burton Kate? That's Burton Kate who's got it all wrong. Well, hold the phone as it's going to be a move from Tabbers there, but he can't quite find it, and Fox holds on. But Burton Kate, meanwhile, has dropped all the way down the order. He's had to tow to the pits. What exactly happened to the second place Evo driver? Well, we cut immediately to a replay of this, ladies and gents, because all drama's kicking off. This was down the start finish straight. Behind him, I believe, was that McLaren. Couldn't quite discern who it was, and it's contact with a teammate. A teammate turns Burton Kate on around. I believe that might have been Henry Coolan who he may have made contact with, and Burton Kate's race suddenly goes backwards. And well, as they say, you don't want to have contact with another driver, but the worst thing you want to do is have contact with your teammate. And for Burton Kate, that has completely taken him out of the running for what is P2 in the Evo class. And Wesley Van Rens in all this now, well, I don't think he'll know it until the very end that he is leading by 31 seconds in the Evo class. He's P8 overall, and this race is just coming more and more in his favour every lap he turns, and he just seems to be absolutely unstoppable right now. But look into those overall positions as they make the way on down the start finish straight. We've still got 8 minutes to go, and well, goodness me, I have to think to myself, the fact I haven't had a glass of water since this has started yet. In fact, I am going to take a quick sip if you don't mind, ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to lose my voice. And well, what a load of racing we've had today. Brilliant racing throughout. This Portimão Circuit has generated some absolute firecracker racing. As our drivers make the way on through and onwards towards turns 4 and 5. Well, whilst this is playing out, it does seem as though the battling now has calmed down inside what is the top 10, but outside the top 10 there's still more to come. And we do have what is the second attempt here, as that's a car round on the start finish straight. Who on earth is that who's gone round, I hear you ask? That's Sean Clark, who's had a huge moment with the barrier down the pit straight. But meanwhile, here comes Sander Tabbers on the inside and drag races his way past Jim Fox. And this time, the Corvette Z06 driver, he takes the wet line early to prevent Fox from being able to go defensive on it. He knows all he's got to do is drive in a straight line and gets the move done there. And there'll be a place gained as we see Adam Baker pulling out of turn number 3, going to the outside line to let these cars through. But now Danny Weir is going to have a look at Jim Fox. And well, I'll tell you one thing, Weir is going to become the third driver in the sequence who's going to be looking at the back of that Suma GP2 Porsche, and he's going to very quickly realise it's running wet tyres that are getting very, very hot. But the problem is, when Fox goes defensive, well, there's not as much water anymore. In fact, over the last 10 minutes, we've seen that water dry up for the most part, even off of the racing line. And I think now it's going to be a case that Weir's just got to pick the right place to make the move, but there's plenty more opportunities for him to do so. Well, there's some standing water down the inside. It's turn number 7 under braking, but that's not normally a place you want to go for. It's more 8, but the point being here that Fox is running out of wet patches to cool the tyres down, and that's going to make life harder and harder as he gets towards natural conclusion. albeit Veer here doesn't have as much a pace advantage as perhaps Tabbers alternatively Montine have, and therefore this will be one of those situations where it's going to be a bit tough. But meanwhile, Montine rejoins, and the gravel trap at turns 10 and 11 goes deep and goes around. Oh my goodness, and that is a very, very near miss there for what is one of our Porsche drivers. In the end, it was a lap down, I do believe, but Andre Montine gets the car finally back up to speed off camera as we look back to the battle between Veer and Fox, but that could have been a nightmare moment for Montine and his compatriots around him. But meanwhile, Veer here trying to go all the way around the outside of Fox. Fox trying to hold on to P14, but Veer's just got so much more traction off of corner exit of 14 and gets it done, does Danny Weir. For another position up to P14 now, and well, he can put that battle to bed as Fox will watch on from behind and realise now that wet tyre, it was a gamble, but it's a gamble that's not paid off in terms of positions, but it's definitely paid off in terms of the fireworks we've seen. As meanwhile, just behind him there is your race leader of Ricardo Luis Pereira, who makes his way through, and right now Luis Pereira absolutely flying another lap there, albeit he is not flying as high as perhaps he once was. Rob McKee has the fastest lap, but in fact the McLaren driver for DXT Motorsports has just set the fastest lap on the previous lap of a 45.93. It is the only 45 that's been set over the entire race distance. That fastest lap bonus point will be coming the way of McKee unless anybody else can find a magical lap out there, but right now McKee absolutely running high and dry in terms of those lap times. And well, as he makes his way after Christopher Starsbourg, is 5 seconds up the road. Well, Starsbourg meanwhile has got Nick Stubb in front of him, and Stubb is another runner of the wet tyre. He's one of only 2 runners inside the top 20 on the wet compound. The other one of course being Fox, who's a bit further back down the order, but Starsbourg trying to get into the what is P9 position overall, but what is P8 in the Premier class. He's over the back of his rivals as they make the way in towards that braking zone. As they do, he's going to go around the outside here. He'll have the greater grip, or no, he won't in fact, because out there is still a wet patch on that outside line, and Starsbourg finds out that Stubb there knows exactly where the dry line is and forces Starsbourg off of it. And that is what Stubb and Fox are both working on the principle of, which is, yes, you're the faster driver, but you've got to find a dry patch to make a move on me, and I can make you drive on the wet patch instead by simply putting my car in the right place at the right time. But powering their way on down at 56 minutes complete, 4 to go, plus the final lap. And well, right now as we do look to the class positions once again, well, let's give you an update on where the classes stand, starting with the Evo class. And P8 overall right now, he has led this race from the start after what was a phenomenal lap to P5 overall, and pole position in the Evo class is Wesley Van Rens, who right now leads the Evo class by 30 seconds over Mark Parkhurst. And well, Mark Parkhurst meanwhile back in P2 here in the class, P11 overall. He's not had a bad race, to be fair, having started P7 in the Evo class, and then he's avoided all the trouble, all the drama around him, and that's why things have worked out the way they have in the number 31 Porsche 992, and then at Road Turv Krier, who went the longest of everybody in the Evo class, indeed overall inside the top 30 in terms of not coming into the pits until literally being forced to go onto that dry tyre. Well, he has moved all the way up to P15 overall and P3 in what is the Evo class. He has had a few black clouds hanging over his race in terms of some instance, including some contact with Peter Duke when Duke did leave the pit lane, so therefore Turf Korea will know that this race is running on what is a car that's got a lot of damage on that front end, and therefore he's going to hold on. But it's not been the perfect race, but still be very happy with that P3, and so he should be, in the fact that right now he's delivered an absolutely solid drive. But we're going to have to hold the phone next. We've had Stuart Rice go around, and that's on the exit, or the apex of turn number 15, on the out, not turn number 15, turn number 5 I should say, and number 142 driver trying to rejoin, but he's going to let a lot of the field through. Patience is a virtue and definitely demonstrated it, but that's a surprise, not a welcome one to be sure. But then coming back up into the what is the Premier class, well, we'll give an update on the top 3 shortly, but right now, well, it was the corner before, previously where Christopher Starsbourg lost out on the previous lap, but this time he's going to look for the attack of the Ferrari on the Porsche Nick Stubb, and he gets a brilliant run out 15, gets ahead immediately, does the Ferrari driver, and he can see that Stubb wants to tuck right back into the tyre immediately, and Starsbourg says, no you don't, weaves a little bit, returns to the racing line, as Stubb tries to look onto the inside there to try and go all in on the brakes, but Starsbourg finally gets that move done for P8 in the Premier class, but he was made to work hard for it, and with that, and now being the best part of what is 20 seconds to Wesley Van Vens up the road, I would imagine that Starsbourg at this point will just be focusing on getting away from Stubb and end his day P8 to the Premier class. But what a crazy race, as we say hello to Steve at 21 there, and also to Ryan at JD, who's been cheering on a Roz Norsworthy all the way throughout. And well, if I've missed anyone there, I do apologise. Try to catch everyone as you've all come through, but still more to come potentially as we look to Jon Ludbrook, who right now P4 overall in the Premier class, well, with what is One more lap to go after this one. Oh, goodness, a big slide there from Ludbrook, and Sheesby almost checking up there and losing it on the inside into what was turn number 14. Well, both drivers there, I think, getting a little bit too eager with how they turned into the corner and going very sideways. But from all this, we've had what is Peter Duke as well go round, as that is a DXT Motorsports McLaren. I believe it's a lap down McLaren of McKee, make its way on past having to an extra pit stop due to fuel considerations, the DXT Motorsports driver. But Peter Duke's had a big slide there coming through 13 to 14, and that's going to bring Starswell a little bit closer, but still a long way off the best part of 21 seconds, so therefore Starswell won't be close enough to really look for a potential move at this time. But the point being right now that those gaps definitely between our drivers, they could oscillate at any moment, and I believe that was the white flag being waved there unless I'm mistaken. Yes, it was, because our race leader right now with only 30 seconds to go, well, Ricardo Luis Pereira running happily, but hold up a second, what's this? James Bostock's off, and that's at turn number 5. He's going to rejoin, and is he going to rejoin in time? I believe he might have been involved in into Alex Boniface, and the car is wounded. Bostock's race is in tears. It's not going any further, and Bostock is out of this race literally at the close. He tries to rejoin. Meanwhile, from a driver who's all been in tears right at the end to a driver who's absolutely run away with this today, was he makes his way through the final corner. He's been faultless to a T, whether it be in qualifying or over a race distance, and the man who comes through to take victory is none other Ricardo Luis Pereira in the 137 Acura, who absolutely dominates here at Portimão by the best part of 23 seconds over what will be eventually Jan Osterberg, who makes his way on through. Well, here we come to our P2 driver as he makes his way through the sweep in at final corner, and as he does so, he will see his checker flag as well. And what a challenging race it's been for Osterberg as he makes his way towards that timeline, and it will be P2 in the Premier class for Osterberg, the Swede, who definitely had a brilliant day in the sunshine at Portimão at the end of the day. It will then be Jon Ludbrook who takes over from James Bostock for Kame GP2, and he will take what will be that final spot on the overall and also the Premier podium. As much as Dean Sheesby going to try and out-drag him to the line, but Ludbrook will just take it in time with Sheesby running shy by 500ths in the Acura, and then it will be 19 seconds to what will be Matthew Croft, who's definitely had a race where he's had to battle uphill throughout it, and you can see the running of the car there, the damage he's picked up over the course, but he will take P5 overall. But behind him by 10 seconds is going to be your Evo winner, and after 2 wins at Watkins Glen, he now makes it 3 in a row with the first feature race win of the class. Wesley Van Rens absolutely delivers here in Portugal and leads comfortably by 30 seconds over his rivals. Peter Duke will then come through to P7 overall, ahead of what will be Christopher Starswell by 20 seconds as they come down. But here comes Starswell then making his way to line for the Simcast Racing team. We're next up only 2 seconds behind, but not having any tyre life left to talk about. But as they roar the way through, Christopher Starswell right now will be happy with this performance as he comes to line, and then it will be Nick Stubb who just missed out behind him there in the Porsche, and then we'll have Mark Parkhurst coming through to take the runner-up spot in the Evo class, and what a drive from Parkhurst as well, having started a long way back, and will meanwhile P3 in the Evo class. He finished a lap down on the leaders, but give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Rolled Turf Krier, who in the end in the number 20, demonstrating that today it was all about strategy, and he went the longest of everybody on the wet tyre, and it enabled him to leap his way all the way up into P3 in the Evo class, where many lost their head. He for the most part kept his cool. But goodness me, what a round of racing for our 60-minute feature race. You could not make up the story here. Indeed, you could write an entire novel or many as a result of everything that played out. But with that, let's take a look at those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. And here they are, ladies and gentlemen, starting, of course, with the overall results. And after 60 minutes of racing action, which seems to be absolutely unstoppable and unedited with regards to whether the rain was here or the sunshine, the racing kept on going from corner to corner and lap to lap. When round number 2, the 60-minute feature race, it was Ricardo Luis Pereira who took victory for Vulcan Motorsport Silver by an absolutely astonishing 23.5 seconds over Jan Osterberg for Nyfors at Glass Tech Racing. P3 overall, it was Jon Ludbrook for Kame GP2 Porsche, all the top 3 overall drivers also being your podium finishers for what was the Premier class, and then Dean Sheesby just missing out by 500ths, if less than that, in the run to the finish line there versus Ludbrook, but the Moonshiners Racing Club driver just not having enough in the tank. We then did see for Z-Axis Sim Sports was Matthew Croft take P5 there, and an absolutely solid drive, 10 seconds ahead of your Evo winner P6 Wesley Van Rens, the Racing League Hub driver, absolutely delivering and keeping his head down and not putting any mistakes in today, and that's the way he'll want it to continue all the way through the season. Peter Duke took P7, the DDK Racing Team driver, a brilliant qualifying session, but struggling massively over the race distance, and the 177 just not coming light today compared to Watkins Glen, and I think Duke will be back to the drawing board there to understand what exactly happened. Christopher Starswell finished P8 for Simcast Racing at UK, with an absolutely solid drive there, having started outside the top 10, but finished just inside it, with Nick Stubb P9 there for Vulcan Fasters by Glass Tech Racing, and Mark Parker, your runner-up in the Evo class, rounding off your top 10 there for ZX's Sim Sports in a quiet race, but one that was well earned. And James Bostock with the heartbreak there with the retirement on the final lap, but he will be classified P11 as a result of how the lead lap came about, and therefore the Carme GP2 Porsche driver missing out on that podium by a lap, and we're not quite sure what happened, but we know it was all over at turn number 5, and then we did see Danny Veer, Sander Tabbers, Jim Fox, and then Road Turf Courier complete your top 15 overall, and a special mention to the MJK Sim Racing driver for taking the third place spot in the Evo class. What a drive from him, and all on strategy, hard earned, but the rewards being worth the risks on that strategic gamble. But outside of what was your top 15, looking on further down to complete the top 20, was Adam Baker, Mark De Vries, Andre Montine, Stuart Rice and Minno Bloom. And as we then make our way towards the drivers who did not finish the race overall, we see a number of drivers finished a lap down there, all the way through to what was P25 driver Adel Chaudhry, the Varna Academy driver, before was 2 laps down to Jan Nagy for Nifels at Glass Tech Racing, and it was 2 laps down subsequently to all of our finishers there, to the 4 laps down drivers of James Howarth and also Gareth Newton, 6 laps down to what was Steve Rubino ahead of Klaas Vellen, who was a further lap down, 7 laps down with Ros Norsworthy, and 8 laps down to Craig Tillerson. And we also did see there a difficult race, and what was non-finishers as classified for James Fraser, Mark Wesley, Henry Coolan, Robin Aston, and what was Antti Quaranta, Denny Plurger, Christian Malaskov, Liam Fraser, Robert Nobles, and Dale Williams. But then coming on to what was your class finishers. And as we do come on to what will be the Premier Class first and foremost, well, we will see here as we do look all the way back up to the very top, and well, they're having to get out what was the cranking oil pullers all the way up to the top of the results. Ricardo Luis Pereira delivering at the top of the class there for Vulcan Motorsport Silver, and absolutely dominating today. Whether it be in qualifying or the race, he was untouchable, the Portuguese, no doubt about it. The Swede of Jan Österberg, meanwhile, earned his way to the podium, and the Nifels at Glass Tech Racing driver will know that P2 was the best he could get out the race today compared to the untouchable race winner, but he seemed in his own way untouchable in terms of chasing down that P2. Jon Ludbrook took P3 there, the Carme GP2 Porsche driver, with another solid podium finish to add to his race win at Watkins Glen International, and the 114 driver will be very pleased with that, knowing that the results are coming his way. And then outside the podium, Dean Sheesby just missing out there for Moonshiners Racing Club, but a solid point score. Matthew Crawford was P5 as ZX's Sim Sport, and your top 10 was rounded off by Peter Duke, Crystal Starsmore, Nick Stubb, James Bostock and Danny Veer. Keeping in mind the DXT Motorsports driver there, may have finished a lap down, but what a hard-earned result there to finish P10 in the Premier Class, given how the race started and how it ended. He'll be very happy with that, and it was laps down as well. But Sander Tabbers was best of the rest of the sim racing team at Lowlands, and some brilliant battling from the Corvette Z06 driver, ahead of Jim Fox, who gambled on the wet tyre on the second stint. It didn't work out, but it led to some spectacular fighting as he tried to hold on to the positions that were gradually fading away. And Adam Baker, Mark De Vries and Andre Montine completed the top 15, and a special mention to the ZX's Sim Sports driver of what was at Montine, and the fact it didn't quite work out in the end, but he definitely tried his best to make his way up through that order with some brilliant passes. Also lap down with Stuart Rice, Minno Bloom, Rob McKee, I should say, and also Gordon Hales. It was 2 laps down there to James Pallett, and then a further 2 laps down to James Howarth, and Klaas Vellen at P22 there for Nifels at Glass Tech Racing. A frustrating day, no doubt about it, and not a happy day in the office. But coming in from what was your Premier Class to then last but not least our Evo Class, I do believe, as that's going to appear on screen, and there we go. And in the Evo Class, Wesley Van Rens taking victory, one of only 2 Evo drivers to finish on the lead lap for Racing League Hub, and the other 31.5 seconds down effectively in the end was Mark Parkhurst as ZX's Sim Sports. But well done to both of them, and also well done to Road Turf Courier, the Dutchman for MJK Sim Racing, absolutely delivering there to be the first of the Evo drivers a lap down, but the last of the drivers to finish on the class podium. There's also a lap down to Grant Miller, and what an overturning of results there for the Phoenix Racing driver. Keeping in mind, in the first 15 minutes of the race, it all looked to be in tears, but the Scotsman there turning things around, and I think his son will be absolutely pleased to see the fact that he managed to make sure that Mustang made its way to P4 in class, ahead of Burton Kate, with that late instant with his teammate cost him at the runner-up spot. Adil Chowdhury finished P6 for Renault Academy. A good recovery drive there to finish a lap down. 2 laps down to Jan Nagy ahead of Daniel Paul. Also Rob Gregg and Alex Boniface in the Audi R8 Evo. And it was best rest P11 for Sean Clark for DXT Motorsports to end up in the wall on the pit lane straight, if I remember correctly, albeit getting it back out the wall and back up to run him. It was also 2 laps down to Eduardo Andino. 4 laps down there to Gareth Newton. 6 down to Steve Rubino. And unfortunately their retirements for was James Fraser, Mark Wesley and Robert Nobles. A difficult end to the race for some of our drivers, no doubt about it. But that concludes all of your racing, of course, ladies and gentlemen. But we've still got a bit more of a broadcast to go in the fact that we are going to be grabbing some post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers in due course. And do let us know in the meantime, what was your favourite moment of the racing in the YouTube chat. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get ready for those interviews. We will see you in about 5 minutes' time.
Of the green flag, and there we go. Tristan immediately getting the jump on his teammate Luke Lucchese, and he's going to have to go the long way around the outside. It's not done yet because Luke will have that favoured inside line going into turn 1 side by side. Has had a good start. He's up 2 places around the outside of Luke Lucchese. 3 wide there, the blue Acura on the inside. Hayden Phoenix Miller has gone from 4th to 1st in the matter of 1 braking zone there, and he will carry these drivers now down in toward turn 4. Great start there for the debutant who had strong qualifying pace, and now he might be up with an opportunity of making that stick if he can get the clean air in the next, and Plurg could have a good run here. Let's ride on board. How does the Noblica defend going into the chicane? Is Plurg going to do that tactic where you just stay there right into the last? Noblica moves over to the entry into the chicane. Good driving. That's a wobble by Tristan, and he's off the road. He's going to lose the position. Is he going to stick up the inside? No. And is Justin Eloff going to fancy his chances? No, he stays.
Watkins Glen, and to have only 9 minutes till we reset and go again gives the drivers a bit of a moment to pause for thought, because how are you going to manage this, especially if you're 3 wide down the main straight? Humphrey, Leskinen, Kachali all don't get out Raj Harper either. 2 by 2 into the opening corner. Outside line taken for Humphrey. He's also a little bit of time on the exit though, as it looks like it's a better run for Kali Leskinen, the leader now in that pro class, as they run their way up the hill through 2 and 3. It looks like Raz Harper's got the best run, and now we could see both elite drivers come through on both pro drivers. So they'll have to get it done on the outside of the bus stop, and that is going to be more than difficult to do. Who's going to get the slipstream? That could be crucial. Now will be on the clock as the pace car is about to roll back in. GT3, so many of them about to get racing. GT4 is just in behind as well. A brand new season is about to get going here at the Sachsenring. It's ESR's GT European Championship, and Anton Kalo will lead us to green for the opening time this season. Jason Baxter and Jenny Tehar just in behind as the lights are on. The green flag flies, and there's a couple of drivers pulling out immediately of the pack. 3 wide, nearly 4 wide into the opening turn, with Denzel Clarkson trying to find an inside line. Jenny Tehar as well.
More, he's got Craig Hewlett in P11 just coming down the pit lane now with Henry Garcia, so this is going to end up being quite a tight battle. If they're going to also have Pedro to deal with, who would just be coming out in front of them. Yeah, he's a little bit further down the road, so these two are going side by side through a very, very tricky section. Looks like Craig's got the better of it done for the moment.
Seconds in the pit strategy, whether it's a 20-minute overcut, 20-minute undercut, we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Jenny Tehar and Jason Baxter are fighting it out for the lead of the overall race. Baxter trying to make his way through. It'll have to be an outside line into turn 2 where a GT4 sits on the racing line. That's for number 14, but they have to negotiate their way around. But as they run through turns 2 and through turn 3, they don't have to now worry about that GT4 any longer, and can continue working their way down a long way, and it can help you build in things like GT3, maybe some prototype cars as well. But yeah, it's so impressive to see him doing so well at the front of the field. Joe Glass getting himself, his teammate I should mention, as I said. Oh, still tries into that. That's a send from Dave Van Dam very late on the brakes into turn 1, but he's got it stopped in the apex. That's an incredible move. Very, very surprising for Joe Glass to find a car on his inside there, but effective for Dave Van Dam, and he has caught Joe Glass napping.
of the green flag, and there we go. Tristan immediately getting the jump on his teammate Luke Lucchese, and he's going to have to go the long way around the outside. It's not done yet because Luke will have that favoured inside line going into turn one, side by side. Has had a good start. He's up 2 places around the outside of Luke Lucchese. 3 wide there, the blue Acura on the inside. Hayden Phoenix Miller has gone from 4th to 1st in the matter of 1 braking zone there, and he will carry these drivers now down in toward turn 4. Great start there for the debutant who had strong qualifying pace, and now he might be up with an opportunity of making that stick if he can get the clean air in the next, and Plurg could have a good run here. Let's ride on board. How does the Ludbrook defend going into the chicane? Is Plurg going to do that tactic where you just stay there right into the last? Ludbrook moves over to the entry into the chicane. Good driving. That's a wobble by Tristan, and he's off the road. He's going to lose the position. Is he going to stick up the inside? No. And is Justin Eloff going to fancy his chances? No, he stays.
Watkins Glen, and to have only 9 minutes before we reset and go again gives the drivers a bit of a moment to pause for thought, because how are you going to manage this, especially if you're 3 wide down the main straight? Humphrey, Leskinen, Kachali all don't get out Raj Harper either. 2 by 2 into the opening corner. Outside line taken for Humphrey. He's also a little bit of time on the exit though, as it looks like it's a better run for Kali Leskinen, the leader now in that pro class, as they run their way up the hill through 2 and 3. It looks like Raz Harper's got the best run, and now we could see both elite drivers come through on both pro drivers. They'll have to get it done on the outside of the bus stop, and that is going to be more than difficult to do. Who's going to get the slipstream? That could be crucial. One hour will be on the clock as the pace car is about to roll back in. GT3, so many of them about to get racing. GT4 is just in behind as well. A brand new season is about to get going here at the Sachsenring. It's ESR's GT European Championship, and Anton Kalo will lead us to green for the opening time this season. Jason Baxter and Jenny Tehar just in behind as the lights are on. The green flag flies, and there's a couple of drivers pulling out immediately of the pack. 3 wide, nearly 4 wide into the opening turn, with Denzel Clarkson trying to find an inside line. Jenny Tehar as well.
More, he's got Craig Hewlett in P11 just coming down the pit lane now with Henry Garcia, so this is going to end up being quite a tight battle. If they're going to also have Pedro to deal with, he would just be coming out in front of them. Yeah, he's a little bit further down the road, so these two are going side by side through a very, very tricky section. Looks like Craig's got the better of it done for the moment.
Seconds in the pit strategy, whether it's a 20-minute overcut, 20-minute undercut, we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, Jenny Tehar and Jason Baxter are fighting it out for the lead of the overall race. Baxter trying to make his way through. It'll have to be an outside line into turn 2 where a GT4 sits on the racing line. That's the number 14 that they have to negotiate their way around. But as they run through turns 2 and through turn 3, they don't have to now worry about that GT4 any longer, and can continue working their way down a long way. And it can help you build in things like GT3, maybe some prototype cars as well. But yeah, it's so impressive to see him doing so well at the front of the field. Joe Glass getting himself, his teammate I should mention, as I said. Oh, still tries into that. That's a send from Dave Van Dam very late on the brakes into turn 1, but he's got it stopped in the apex. That's an incredible move. Very, very surprising for Joe Glass to find a car on his inside there, but effective for Dave Van Dam, and he has caught Joe Glass napping.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we apologise for a slight delay, but without further ado, it is time for us to get our post-round interviews underway. And well, we're going to be hearing today from 2 drivers in the Premier class. We're going to be coming to our race winner and pole sitter in the Premier class of Ricardo Luis Pereira shortly, and also to Dean Sheesby from Moonshiners Racing Club. But before all that, let's hear from a man who had it all go backwards at the start, but made his way back up the field as time went on, and in the end brought home was an absolutely brilliant drive to P4 in the Evo class. And it's going to be none other than what is Grant Miller, who's going to join me in the interview room very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, he's going to join me now, and let's hear his story. Good evening to you, Grant, and well, what a day today from yourself. I mean, at one point, it all looked as though it was in tears in the race, but you kept strong, you kept committed, and by the end of it, you managed to salvage out of it all what was a P4 in the Evo class. You must be happy with this one.
Oh, yeah, good evening. Yeah, it was keep it on the island until the end. The first half of that race, I had done all my practice in the dry, the wet, I couldn't go anywhere. Just no pace at all. So I thought I'll start on a dry setup with wet tyres and just hope everybody else falls off. They didn't, and a few corners I couldn't keep it on the track. There was no grip for me, and I'm still learning how to drive these things. So yeah, good in the end. I fitted slicks and had a decent pit stop. Probably put a bit too much fuel in. For some reason I wasn't burning anywhere near as much fuel as I thought I was, and I think I still had 20 laps worth of fuel left in the car at the end, something like that, 20 minutes left of fuel in the car at the end, so just need to get more practice. But yeah, I think it finished up well. I had totally lost where I was on the track in relation to the guys that are usually around me in the Evo class, so just try to hold on and see if I could finish.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about your race and how it played out in due course, and I appreciate the early analysis there, and I think you talking about the fact just holding on and seeing where you'd finish is an absolutely apt description of what could be said for your race, indeed many a driver's race today. But take us through qualifying, because qualifying as well didn't look too bad out there in the end. What was a P16 in class, albeit I think everyone was really struggling with the conditions out there, but where did you find yourself in qualifying?
In the gravel, off the track, into the barrier once, spun it twice, I think, on pit road, well, coming into the pit entry, and nowhere really. I only got one official lap in, and that was an absolute fluke. I just got my braking right to keep it on the track, otherwise I wouldn't have set a time. So yeah, I need to get a bit more practice in the wet on especially with the Mustang. It's a bit of a boat, and it seems to pick whatever direction it wants to turn, to be honest.
No, that's absolutely fair. And speaking of boats and smooth sailing, coming from qualifying then into the race, I mean, it was always going to be a race that by looks things weather-wise, it was going to go from the wet to dry at some point, but starting so far back as well, just take us for those opening couple laps, because I can imagine you're probably thinking not just about keeping it on the track, but also the opportunities and also the strategy, how that would all fit together.
Well, the strategy was survival. Because I don't have a high enough iRating, I've never done a race in the wet in my life on iRacing. So it was just a case of trying to spot the brake lights, trying to get my marker positions, because I was on all the wrong parts of the track, just trying to find a gap where there was no brake lights. So really it was just a case of holding on. Getting through the first few laps to try and understand where there was at least some grip by following others was the only thing I could do. I had literally no reference to where the racing lines would be with, I don't know what it was, 40 cars in front of me. So just aiming for the gaps between cars and braking about 100 meters earlier than what I would normally do, and hoping.
Well, might have been hope in the end, and I get the feeling that hope may have turned to despair at some points, given a couple of the spins out there, but you kept your head down. And just take us through that as well, because, of course, for a number of participants, it may be the case that once you've had one or two spins, you end up thinking, okay, nothing's going to come of this, but you just seem to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, because it's a double points race, we've only got one quick repair, one fast repair. And I thought, well, if I fall off, and as long as I don't hit anything, I've at least got a chance of getting probably more points than what I would do in a conventional weekend on a 2-race event. So it was really just a case of, right, keep it going. If it's still pointing in the right direction and all the wheels are still attached, then keep going. But yeah, there was a couple of tank slappers in there. As I said, not really having any references to when to change setups and brake balance and stuff. I would try and catch it, and then it would flick the other way, and then it would flick back again, and then you just let go of the steering wheel because the force feedback was literally just wobbling the steering wheel everywhere. And at that point, it was just a case of, right, well, I'm on the grass now. Which way am I facing? Or I think there was once I was actually facing down the hill or up the hill, and I couldn't even get in second gear. I couldn't even get the car up the hill. It was literally point, and then try and look out the left window to make sure nothing's coming to get hit. And I was like, no, this is dangerous. I'll reverse out here, and I'll try a different approach to get back on the track. I've only got one monitor, so I couldn't actually see where any of the cars were. I was like, right, just hope, and then back on the track. But yeah, the second half of the race, when a dry line appeared, it was a lot more familiar. Got a good bit of pace. I could see the lap times were fairly decent for my normal pace, whilst I'm still, a bit uncertain of the braking points. But yeah, fingers crossed it all worked out, and we've got a decent haul of points, I think. I had a screen freeze. The second last lap came out of, I guess it's turn 1, and the screen just completely froze, and I can't see where I'm going. I'm just holding on to the steering wheel. I'm on the brake, gently, just trying not to feel anything getting hit. And the screen came back on, and I think there was like two leaders coming past me, or two of our class was coming past me, and I thought, right, that's just getting a bit close for a bit close to the line for that. So I'll need to find out why. I need to find out why my screen keeps freezing. It happened in Watkins Glen as well, which is why I hit the barrier in Watkins Glen. So I need to find out what's wrong with that.
Well, definitely an area to find out where you can have not happen again, no doubt about it. But still, I'd like to say, given you race for Phoenix Racing, excuse the pun, but you rose from the ashes today like the Phoenix and ended up finishing at P4 in class for that P21 overall. So keeping all the way in it to win it in the end, rewarding you, like you say, some big points. And of course, after today, we head to sunny Italy for Mugello in a week's time. How are you feeling for the visit to Italy?
A bit better than what I was when we were going sailing around the roller coaster tonight, but I've done a bit more practice on Mugello. I've been getting some lessons from one of the Euro GT4 drivers, Marius. So been really working a bit hard on that track to get at least practice 2 or 3 weeks further down the line. But anything can happen. There's a lot of drivers, as I say, not normally taking part in a race that's got 60 drivers in it. Is all your reference points go, all your braking points go, and pretty much for a novice on these things, it's just finding the confidence to get a bit of speed and get a setup that works, get a bit of comfort. But yeah, it looks good. I'm pretty confident I know my way around that one now. Hopefully we've got another week to just polish a few corners. I think we've still got a few things to work on. I haven't actually done a pit stop in there, so I'll need to, because I think it's a fast entry into that one, so I'll need to find out where the reference points are. But yeah, really looking forward to that one, and should be a good race.
Oh, without a doubt. And, well, we look forward to seeing you out on the Italian circuit in a week's time and seeing what you can do and potentially chase down a podium. But just before we do let you go, Grant, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, so shout out to Marius Hibma, who's been giving me some pointers and some tuition. He's doing absolutely fantastic, putting up with me and all my shouting and swearing at the screen when it doesn't go quite right. So thanks to Marius. And also my son Hayden, he's usually in split A, but he's had some foot surgery, so he's going to be missing a few weeks until that gets back healed. So yep, thanks for all the support and all the help over the last few weeks, and we'll try and get a bit better for next week.
Well, Grant, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. No doubt about it. And I think embodying the spirit of, you know what, it's not about how you start the day, it's about how you finish. You've definitely finished on a high. Well done once again on your performance in the race, that P4 in class, in the Evo class, and we look forward to plenty more in a week's time at the Mugello circuit in Italy. But until then, have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thanks so much. Cheers, guys.
So here in there, ladies and gentlemen, from Grant Miller for Phoenix Racing. And we do apologise in the background with the positions he started and finished in with regards to the racing today being incorrect. Slight technical hitch on our end. But as we do see him spinning around there on the replay footage, really demonstrating today that really all about survival in the wet at the Portimão Circuit. From whether it was qualifying, just surviving to get a lap on the board and getting one in right at the close to take that P36 overall, or even in the race. And there were several moments, and even admitted himself, and we caught it on camera, that moment where he ended up beached on the grass coming out to turn at number 11 and eventually getting the car going, but having to wait a long time and trying to get it to roll uphill as well on very slippery grass. Not easy, but learning from each and every experience out there in a Mustang that felt like a boat, but it was smooth sailing at some point towards the end, and for Grant Miller picking up the pieces where many dropped it and many may not have had the heart to be able to maintain that spirit that he definitely demonstrated. And the Phoenix Racing driver with that P4, that's some big points on the score, because remember, this round is worth just as many points as the 2x30 sprint race round, and that's why you refer to it as a double points round, because it's one race that's worth the points of 2 sprint races, and those points could go a long way. But also mentioning there, feeling excited for Mugello, putting in a lot of practice, and it's all coming together. So could we see him make his way onto the podium in Italy in a week's time? My gut feeling says he'll be going for it, and we look forward to seeing him try. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now come on to your second interview of the day, and we're going to be hearing from none other than race winner overall and also in the Premier class, and that is going to be Ricardo Luis Pereira. And well, we're going to be hearing his story as he gets set to join me in the interview room, and I think he's going to do so now. And here he is, the man today who proved to be absolutely unstoppable, whether it be in qualifying, a dry or a wet race. Ricardo Luis Pereira. Ricardo, firstly, allow me to say on behalf of everyone tuning in, what a performance from yourself. I mean, how do you feel taking victory by such a margin?
Hello, very good evening. Yeah, we tried to make some preparation on this one. Fortunately, this is a track that I know very well. I'm Portuguese. I've been there a couple of times on track days and stuff like that. So it's a track that I know very well. Not very well in rain. I just have been there once with wet conditions. But anyway, it was a good one. I think we did it very well. But it was tough because it was a wet dry transition, and it doesn't forgive any kind of mistakes. If you step out away of the proper line, you're dead. So yeah, that's it.
Well, like you're saying, unforgiving circuit, but one that you have experience of, but not in the wet, but certainly in the dry. But still, you may not have had that much experience in the wet, but you showed that experience was building up very quickly in qualifying. Pole position in the end, and well, what a pole position it was as well, out-edging your rivals, including Peter Duke. How did qualifying feel for you?
I felt very good. Actually, I thought the temperature was a bit lower than it was. The car was a bit loose. There was a lot of water on the track. So to be honest, I didn't thought that my times would be enough to keep a pole position, because the other guys, they showed themselves very fast on the practice session. So, but well, I was slower than they were slower as well. So anyway, my time was the first place. So I'm very happy with that.
Well, I'll say definitely one to be very happy about. And going into the race itself, I mean, we saw you go as soon as the lights went green, and you never looked back from that point onwards. I get the feeling that was always your idea, just use that pace you picked up in qualifying and just run off into the distance.
Yeah, that was pretty much that. First thing was to step on the gas as soon as possible. No tricks for anyone else. We know that is not allowed by the SR, and very well done. For these guys as well, very well organized championship. So it was pedal to the metal, covered inside line for the first corner, and keep a good distance, step away from the problems that could happen behind in dry, wet conditions. So yeah, the objective was to try to open up a bit of a gap to the guys behind, which we know that they are very fast, and it could be very dangerous to be involved in incidents with them. So yeah, fresh tires, they behaved very well in the first few laps. We managed to open a few seconds to them, and then it was just to try to manage. That's it.
Well, it was a very well-managed gap, I must say, and one that kept growing. But as time went on, of course, the circuit was gradually drying. A lot of drivers opted to switch to the dry tyres later than some. There were some who went for the early gamble. But something tells me, for yourself, with such a gap, it wasn't really a gamble. It was just, okay, I'll go when everybody else has gone, and I'm going to feel quite comfortable in the car at that point.
No, it's not comfortable at all, because I was, until the last second, trying to decide I had enough fuel to go for another lap at the end. But I was until the last second to decide if I would stay on wets or change to dries, because I knew that the dries, they could give me a bit of a time advantage, but they are much less forgiving if you step out of the line. So, but yeah, I think it was a good bet, and I changed to dries. Anyways, and also gave me the advantage that I could fight for the fastest lap of the race, which we managed to achieve in the last lap. So very happy with that. We're happy with the strategy and the decision. It worked very nice. But thankfully, didn't have to risk on my driving style to step out of between the dry and the wet line to commit the fatal mistake of dying in any turn at any time.
Well, definitely there. It looked flawless, but appreciate you breaking down exactly all the thought processes there, and also that potential risk of knowing when to make that transition. And with the victory today, it puts you up there as now taking one win this season, and we've had 2 rounds of racing, 3 races. But of course, it seems as though from round to round and week to week, it's anybody's guess who's going to be up on top. But how does this leave you now going into Mugello for round number 3? Are you feeling as though now's your time to shine?
Well, you know, Mugello is a different track, different conditions, different day. It's a track that I don't have. I didn't bought it yet, so I have 0 laps in Mugello. So we have to prepare it all over again and try to do the best for the next round, and try to make a good quali and step ahead and give our best. That's it.
Well, straightforward and a simple approach. I like it, and we look forward to seeing you deploy that approach in a week's time for round 3 of the championship. But just before we do let you go, Ricardo, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, of course. Big thanks to my wife, which she allowed me to train a bit to prepare this race. And yeah, that's essentially to her. She's always very kind when she allows me and give me some time to invest in this, and I think she's the main responsible. So that's the one I want to cheer for this victory. Then the next round, as I said, is another story, another track, another race. So you'll be here to share with you guys another great race and a great transmission. And thanks for all. It's very well organized. Hope you see you again in the future. Hopefully we can be here again in the next interview.
Oh, most definitely. And Ricardo, it's been an absolute pleasure having you join me in the interview room. Congratulations once again on your absolutely unstoppable charge to victory. A brilliant drive from a brilliant driver, and we look forward to plenty more in the future. But until then, thank you for your time this evening, and have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thank you. Have a good one. Thank you, Paul. Bye-bye.
So here and there from our overall and always our premier race winner from Vulcan Motorsport Silver, Ricardo Luis Pereira, and well, what a drive there. Thanking his wife first and foremost for being allowed a little bit of extra practice time, but talking about there as well, interestingly, the fact that whilst he's got a lot of real life experience doing track days around his local country circuit of Portimão, the fact that not having experience driving in the wet and having to very quickly learn or come to terms with the wet conditions, but in the end putting it on pole, almost a little bit surprised by taking pole position, but taking that and moving it forward to realise, okay, we've got the pace here and we can just run away with this. And mentioned there, the art of the race was just to simply get his foot down at the start and break away. But also they're talking about the fact that being absolutely on tenterhooks, or being worried about transitioning to the dry tyre and only making that decision at the last moment to come into the pits when he did, well, it goes to show you, even the fastest drivers out there, they're not running comfortably, or they haven't been at Portimão, and therefore this win being very hard crafted by the 137 driver and not taking anything for granted, including that fastest lap, which he managed to swipe back into his hands at the end of the day. And it means it will be, presuming everything goes through Stewart's inquiry-wise, it will be a ultimate point advantage there for Ricardo Luis Pereira, taking every point from this round into week number 3 in a week's time of round number 3. And well, what a drive there from the premier driver. And indeed, if he carries that momentum into Mugello, surely he's got to be making himself an early favourite in the championship. But now coming on to our final interview, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from one of them, you've heard from 2 of them, and now you're going to hear from our 3rd driver, and it's going to be Dean Sheasby, who gets ready to join me in the interview room. And well, we're going to hear the story of the man today who seems to spring surprises left, right and centre. Let him join us now. Good evening to you, Dean. And well, Dean, I do know that at the Algarve Circuit, there's elevation changes, there's rises and falls, and we could say the same of your race today in the fact, in the early stages, it looked as though it had all fallen, but then you turned it around on strategy, you gambled with the dry tyres earlier than most people, and by the end of it, you're absolutely charging down the podium. I mean, did you know where you were at the end of the race, or was this a big surprise to you as well?
To be honest, I knew I had the pace, but as you say, what a rollercoaster of a ride. Qualifying, I literally just about managed to get a lap in on the last lap, and when it come up as P8, I was as shocked as anybody was looking at that kind of result, because I don't know how the hell that came in, because I couldn't get around the track in quality. I don't know what had happened, but I kept going off. So yeah, and then literally decided that I was going to go onto the onto the dries early, and literally thinking about doing it, looking through the pit menu, I ended up slamming it into the wall, losing my front end, which made the decision definite, I'm coming in the pits. And several spins, but yeah, to literally cross the line with me and Ludbrook inches between us, I was gutted. I actually thought we had one more lap. I thought I got him, but then I realised that it was all over and he just peaked me 2 litre for third place. But yeah, what a roller coaster of a race, crazy.
Oh, 100%, no doubt about it. And like you say, if you had one more lap, I think that would have been an absolutely titanic final lap, but it wasn't to be. But just coming back to qualifying and talking out there, just not able to find the pace. I mean, as a Premier driver, well, how did you approach the qualifying session then? If you can't get pace, how did you manage to wrangle that P8 out of the car without feeling as though by the end of it, you know what, qualifying, I might as well give up on it because this Acura and I, we're just not talking to each other tonight?
To be honest, it was the first left-hander going back up. I think it's Portimão the turn, going back up the hill. Couldn't keep us on the track. It just kept washing out wide. And I literally on the final lap, it was like, I need to put a time in here. If I'm at the back of the field, it's going to be carnage. I need to at least get midfield. So literally come up to that corner and eased massively off. Thought I'd lost a huge chunk of time, and then as I say, come across the line and it was there. I was like, obviously everybody was having the same issues. I just didn't adapt to it on the first couple of laps.
Well, may not have worked out in qualifying as much, but you surprised yourself in the end, like you say, with that lap time. But coming into the race, let's talk a little bit about the opening few laps, where it looks like you're right in the thick of it, enjoying some great battling, but as quickly as you rose up through the ranks, you suddenly find it in the wall. How do you turn things around from that mentality-wise? Because I can imagine you're probably absolutely having the time of your life out in the wet conditions, and then suddenly it's an abrupt halt to the racing.
I just literally look at the target, so for this race, and he's going to probably love hearing this, but Bostock was my target. He was the one I had my eyes set on. He was the times I was keeping my eyes on. And before I actually put it in the wall, as the transition between the wet and dry was coming, I had my traction control a little bit too high. I didn't adapt quick enough to bringing it back down. And as you were coming round the last corner, I got my tyres half on the wet line, half on the dry line, and because of the traction, it snapped me. So I was a few seconds behind Bostock, and then I ended up about 18 seconds, and then I got going again, and I could see the time coming down, and I just kept looking at that as a target. And that's probably my downfall for some of the other spins, because I was getting a little bit excited after the pit stop, because I was 20-odd seconds behind him, and then I was 6 seconds, and then I looped it again, so... Yeah, I need to stop making mistakes. I had the pace at Watkins in the first race, and you missed it on stream, but I absolutely killed myself in the bus stop. It's silly mistakes. If it weren't for that, I could be towards the top end of the field more often.
Well, still, there may have been some more mistakes today, like at Watkins Glen, but make no mistake, you definitely showed that when you're put under pressure, you are one of the drivers who rises to that pressure like no other. And coming into the second half of the race, we're on to dry tyres at this point. You're chasing down that podium. James Bostock has lost it on what is the final lap, so it's a showdown between yourself and Jon Ludbrook. I mean, chasing after a Porsche that clearly didn't have pace at that point, you must have been absolutely goading yourself on to be even more daring at corner to corner. But nine, there's still some water out there that can catch you out.
Oh, to be honest, I don't know if you saw it on stream or not, but the lap before the last lap, I was right on his end, and I just touched the curb on the last corner, and I was like 0.4 of a second behind him on the previous lap, and he gained a 1.1 seconds lead again on me, and then I had to claw it back on that last one, and yeah, that little touch of the curb was the difference probably between P3 and P4 today for me.
Oh,
So yeah, as you say, that water's deadly.
Oh, indeed. I believe we may have caught that when you were right on Ludbrook's back. And like you say, just dipping a wheel in the wrong place at the wrong time and costing yourself all that time you'd gained. But still, one thing you've definitely gained today is a lot of supporters in that brilliant drive in the Moonshiners Racing Club Acura. And taking this momentum forward now into round number 3, you've had some brilliant performances so far. What can we expect from yourself at Italy in a week's time?
Unfortunately, the next 2, I'm going to be on a beach somewhere, so you'll expect me to be watching the stream with a beer.
Oh, fair play. Well, you get to put your feet up and hopefully enjoy some sun on a beach, like you say. But still, we'll see you back in a couple of weeks' time for what'll be the racing. But, well, firstly, we hope you have a great holiday. And also, just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the stream tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to say cheers to the Moonshiner boys. Good bunch of lads. We keep it competitive in there, pushing each other. We have a little mini league between us as well, which helps us to push ourselves that little bit harder. And then I'd like to say big thanks to the organisers. Don't always see eye to eye on some of the decisions and that, but it's still a fantastic league and enjoying racing here. Some great lads. So yeah, thanks very much to them. And then yourself for the stream. Can't wait to watch it back, to be honest.
Well, Dean, likewise, we have to say a big thank you to you for joining me in the interview room, and congratulations once again on your performance. It may not have been a podium, but definitely it came close, and a thrilling one all the way to the end. And well, we look forward to seeing plenty more from yourself in a couple of weeks' time in round number 5. But until then, hope you have a fantastic holiday. We'll see you in the broadcast chat in what is a week's time, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. Have a good night as well, mate.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from our final interview of the day, as we see him going scoring across the road and into the barrier in towards what's turn number 5, and one of the incidents that cost him very dear over the race distance. Dean Sheasby there, who we heard from, who had a race of ups and downs and admitted himself, like we mentioned, the fact that a real roller coaster ride, but never giving up all the way through. And even in the qualifying session, where the car was just not coming to him and going sideways just as much as straightways, well, in the end for Sheasby, it was all about just simply getting his head down and trying to grind out a result, and doing exactly that, particularly 9 when it was time to go to the dry tyre in the race, and that was the difference. Albeit over the distance, of course, knowing there was still some mistakes to be made, including on the penultimate lap, where he got so close to the back of Jon Ludbrook just to miss out by putting a tyre onto a wet curb and losing all the time he gained. But he'll learn from all of that, and when we do see him back on the grid in round number 5, I can imagine for Dean, he's going to be coming back relaxed, refreshed, and ready to take the challenges on. Absolutely eyes looking forward, lap to lap and corner to corner. And that's a Dean Sheasby we look forward to seeing just how high he can go as the season rages on. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our interviews for this evening. And you've heard from the 3 drivers of, firstly, Grant Miller in the number 80 for Phoenix Racing in the Evo class. We then heard from your dominant race winner overall in the Premier class of Vulcan Motorsports Silvers, Ricardo Luis Pereira in the 137. And well, from home hero to a man who definitely was a hero and is driving his second stint, Moonshiners Racing Club's Premier class driver of Dean Sheasby in the 152. Thank you to all 3 of our drivers for joining me for a post-round interview. And thank you to them once again for not just being on the grid, but for their brilliant performances, and well done to them. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to be on the grid in the future when it comes to Evolution Sim Racing Series, well, we'd just like to remind you that, of course, we do have our ongoing Thursday evening GT3 Championship in Season 8, which you've watched today in Split B, and there's plenty more rounds of racing to come. But whether it be on Thursdays or on Sundays for the European GT Championship, which is underway, or the upcoming Danny Lee GT Omega Porsche Cup, which has been run in collaboration with infamous sim racer and real-life racing star, I do believe, as well. Oh, he's had a real-life racing journey at some point, I can definitely tell you that. And it's also in collaboration with GT Omega. It is the Danny Lee Porsche Cup, which begins this coming Sunday on the 13th of April. And we look forward to seeing how that unfolds in its season opener, one not to be missed. And we also do, of course, have what is the free-to-join Practice League, which does run every Tuesday evening and also Saturdays at 4 p.m. And that Practice League being in preparation for all of our mainstay series. So there's never been a better time to be on the grid at Evolution Sim Racing. And to get to all the action, all you need to do is join the official Discord server, and you get all the league details and get on track. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to, of course, all of our series sponsors, including Trophy AI, Carme, Modern Technology, VRS as in Virtual Racing School, GP2 Group, and also we'd like to give a special mention to Motorsport UK's esports division, as they have accepted us as a recommended community in the sim racing scene, and we're very grateful to that. But thank you to all of our series and league sponsors. We couldn't do it without them. And well, ladies and gentlemen, the great question now turns, of course, which is to where are we next time? And the answer to that question, well, it is, of course, at the Mugello Circuit in Italy. And in a similar theme to what has been the Portimão Circuit today, the Mugello Circuit is full of rises and falls and elevation changes aplenty, but there's more sweepers out there, and it's expected to be a sunny race day at the Mugello Circuit. And in more stable conditions, will we see the racing stabilise and favourites form in the Premier Class? Because right now, it has been 3 winners in 3 races in the Premier Class, and nobody seems to be a firm favourite. Meanwhile, in the Evo Class, Wesley Van Rens has definitely asserted himself as an early championship favourite with 3 wins out of 3 and looking absolutely untouchable. But how will the story continue in round number 3? We'll tune in on Thursday, the 17th of April 2025, as we continue the story of Split B. But until then, we've been Evolution Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Are you spending a lot of time looking for setups and struggling for faster lap times? Are you tired of searching online for answers? Would you like to get setups, analysis and tutorials from some of the best sim racers in the world like Ralph Alla, Mitchell de Jong, Martin Krunker, Josh Rogers and many more? If so, virtualracingschool.com is the answer you've been looking for. VRS data packs provide hot laps from our professional coaches for you to analyse and replicate. They provide tutorials that walk you through the fastest laps and what the pros did to achieve the best times. And they provide the setups you need to ensure your car is competitive in both oval and road racing. If you're ready to get faster and reach more podiums sooner than later, just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a free account today.